Let's begin with the hilarious story of the ancient garden decor. Alrighty, so an article published on June 19th of 2023 tells the tale of how in the first weeks of the month, an everyday British dude in Hertfordshire, England was just perusing the flea market and found an inconspicuous kind of bamboo looking thing. Assuming it's some scrap metal but finding it cute, he bought it for 25 bucks, brings it home, tosses it in the garden as decorative rockery, and life moves on. Now the person who bought it requested anonymity, so we don't actually know how he came to realize that it wasn't just some metal. He brought it to Hanson's auctioneers and, unaware of its true historical significance, was left dumbfounded when the auctioneers revealed that it was a hand cannon, a rare type of bronze powder weapon that dated back to the 1400s. These devices were pivotal in the development of weaponry during the Middle Ages and originate from China. On June 15th, the hand cannon, previously acquired for essentially pocket change, was auctioned at Hanson's auctioneers with an estimated value of $2,500 to $3,750, more than 100 times of the cannon's purchase price at the flea market. The origins of the artifact remain shrouded in mystery, including how it came into the hands of the flea market seller, but traces of soil residue imply it was unearthed at some point. These archaeological students went dumpster diving for mummies. News of this dropped early June of 2023 after archaeological students from San Marcos University removed 8 tons of trash in the Ramak region of Lima to reach a rare mummified Peruvian body from the ancient Manche culture. The excavation, led by Dr. Miguel Aguilera, said in a Reuters press release that the team first spotted the mummy's hair and skull. He goes on to explain that the mummy had been carefully wrapped in a cotton and vegetable fiber burial cloth and had been laid out flat, which is characteristic for the Manche culture of the formative era, between approximately 1000 BC and 200 AD. This person was also discovered at the center of an Ushnu. It's a U-shaped stonework that's oriented towards the rising sun, representing the point of connection between Earth and the realm of spiritual energy. From what Miguel has examined, the body was found offered as a sacrifice during the last phase of construction of this temple. This is called a foundation ritual, which were significant in South America, Egypt, the Baltics. If you saw my video, the top 10 terrifying urban legends with historical backgrounds, you may know the specific foundation ritual they called Hitobashira in Japan. While every culture has practiced it and had its own name, the act was to place a person, live or dead, where the foundation of a building is to be laid and bury them beneath. Based off the mummification, unlike the poor peasant woman buried beneath Maruka Castle, this person was deceased pre-ritual. Alrighty, so this next point will actually tie into the one after it. So first up is the drought remains, part 1. March 18th, 2023, Catalan leader Pere Aragonès said that Barcelona and the surrounding region are dealing with one of the worst droughts in 50 years, which has led to the remnants of the famous Santa Roma to emerge for the first time since the dam was built in 1963 and drowned the town. You may not recognize the town by its name, but the picture of the half-water immersed church is actually pretty notorious online. Now revealed is the full structure of the church, an empty cemetery, and the foundations of other buildings and homes. The Romanesque church was consecrated in 1062. As beautiful as this is, like the Canadian wildfires, the drought is the earth trying to speak. For the first time, the Saw Reservoir is currently only 10% full, and access to the area has been restricted. Before now, those screenshots popped up online about how navigation apps inadvertently were saying people were submerged in water when they were standing on dry land. So, here is what the church looked like before and now after. This isn't good, guys. Spain's government warned about the eventual need for emergency measures to conserve water, and officials said the reservoirs connecting to the Ter Llobregat River, which provides the main water supply for Barcelona, have shrunk to 27% capacity. Alright, now it's the drought remains part 2. Only a couple months passed from those announcements, and now the remnants of the royal site La Isabela bathhouse, part of a small waterside community that began to emerge in 2022, are almost completely above ground now. This time last year, Spanish reservoirs were at 40% capacity on an average in early August. Beforehand, it was a 10-year average of around 60%. Now they are sitting at 22%. La Isabela was a spa town located on the banks of the Guadalquivir River. This spot was patronized by the Roman city nearby and called Santander, aka Well of Health, by Arabian people. Accurately so, because people came to seek relief from various diseases such as gout, epilepsy, seizure, rheumatism, skin eruptions, and so the site became a pilgrimage, but also a locals haven. There were about 50 houses, all with many rooms for visitors and residents who were going to benefit from the thermal spa water. As in so many spas, its waters could be taken as a drink or in a bath. People preferred to use this particular spring as a drink despite the bad taste that sulfurous hot springs often have, even at low temperatures. Over the years, 2 casas, a church, and a few fountains that adorned the streets were added. In the immediate vicinity was a large orchard, and all the vegetation in the valley was very abundant, similar to that found in valleys that cross La Acaria. Then in 1942, the decision is made to douse the village and make it a reservoir. Since then, it's been under the waters, and now those waters sit at a 22% capacity. We are officially in the middle of the list, which means pizza fresco break. This is neither unsettling nor scary. I just desperately need some dopamine, so share the exciting news with me that on June 27th of 2023, the Italian ministry said, alright, we have something to show you, but please don't freak out. And they revealed to us this. It is a still life fresco, unearthed in Pompeii, of a pizza. Okay, well, it's not a pizza. Italian Culture Ministry announced that it's what looks like a pizza. I guess technically the fresco depicts a flatbread, because a pizza includes tomato and mozzarella, according to them. The ancient origins of flatbread dates back to approximately 14,500 years in Jordan's Black Desert region, suggesting they've actually been part of the human culinary history for tens of thousands of years. As proven, showing up all over the world, all through the centuries, all in different ways. In the case of these Grecian flatbreads, they'd be eaten with pomegranates or dates, or dressed up with spices and a type of pesto sauce, which looked to be atop the bread, not baked onto it. A wine goblet and other fruits are depicted on the same tray. The oldest recorded reference to a pizza-like dish can actually be traced back to ancient Greece in the 5th century BC. In the gastronomic poem Hedipithia, the Greek poet Archestratus mentioned a dish called plakos, which is a form of flatbread topped with various ingredients. Pretty good pizza break, right? Yeah, now back to calamity. Let's talk about how they just completed the 6th Saqqara excavation. That's right, round 6 of tearing apart Egyptian tombs in the necropolis so that the British Museum, the people of the world can have access to the ancient treasures and secrets of the past. The information revealed to us on January 26th of 2023 is that not only did they find some mummies, beautiful artifacts, and hieroglyphics, but also an animal embalming and mummification workshop. The newly discovered animal embalming workshop was constructed with mud and limestone floors. A number of rooms and halls contained pottery, linen animal embroidery, and different animal burials. One room had a collection of bronze tools used for said mummifications and 5 stone beds for the most sacred of Egypt's animals to be mummified on. These would be cats or baboons or even a hippo. As for the peoples, they found 2 tombs. Tomb 1 is someone called Nihasab Ba, and Tomb 2 went by Menkeber. The names of these men and their wives are painted in the tomb, and alabaster statues are found painted in vibrant blues, catching their once live image. A campy classic hero has had his homeland found. Next up will be Conan Comes Home. June 24, 2023 is our latest update on the 14th year of excavation in the central Kikikal province of Turkey. That update? Japanese archaeologist Kimiyoshi Matsumura revealed that the Buklakale village, which is divided into upper and lower, was the first settlement of the Sumerians, an ancient equestrian nomadic people in Anatolia. Artifacts discovered at the site corroborate this, while also revealing the evidence of warfare within the constructed fortress. On the top layer, we found remnants from the Ottoman period. Below that, we found artifacts from the Hellenistic period, the time of Alexander the Great's arrival. Beneath that, we identified architectural remains, but before that, we found traces of the Lydians. Below that, we found the fortress constructed by the Sumerians, which is what we were aiming for. And beneath that, we discovered settlements dating back to 2000 BC in the Hittite period. Currently, we have reached that level, Kimiyoshi had explained. Located at a strategic point along Turkey's longest river, the community was inhabited from the early Bronze Age to the Ottoman era and served as a natural bridge throughout history. This city has played a crucial role at the crossroads between East and West. The Sumerians naturally are known best for their military prowess and their raids on neighboring kingdoms, and Conan the Barbarian. Our older audience definitely remembers the campy classic from 1982 where they tried to convince us Arnold Schwarzenegger could do a German accent. He could not. Anyways, glad we found your home and proved to doubtful historians the Sumerians actually existed, Conan. If they thought to look sooner, more would be left, but for now we're making the most of the Stonehenge grave sites. Many countries have laws in place that archaeologists have to do sweeps of areas before any development can be done. Too many incidents like the terracotta soldiers, Rosetta Stone, and the rune stones in the floorboards have occurred. It's a great law, and one that allowed for the discovery of the burial site right near Salisbury, England. This unearthed burial mound and tombs are from prehistoric times, approximately 4,000 years old. These types of mounds are known as barrows or round barrows, and they were most commonly made as a tomb cover and a grave marker during the Beaker and early early Bronze Ages of 2400 to 1500 BC. The archaeologists found enough clues to conclude these burials had been made during the later period, meaning they were installed 1,000 years or more after the monuments at Stonehenge were erected just 10 miles away. But let me add some heat, y'all. One of the burial mound's ditches showed clear signs of having been altered from slightly ovular to circular, with the latter representing the normal British Bronze Age preference. Based on the changed design, the archaeologists speculate that the oval-shaped barrel may have originally constructed during the British Neolithic period, 4100 to 2500 BC. This suggests the cemetery actually predates the early Bronze Age, and the burials may have taken place there for several centuries before the Bronze Age tomb was installed, aka before Stonehenge was assembled. Holy but the spice level still ain't enough, so let me pour some more on ya. What also makes this oval to circle tomb widely significant is it's a mass grave and it's the center of the circle. Archaeologists note that this type of group burial is most uncommon, and they are anxious to complete radiocarbon dating on the remains found and learn more about how the people in the grave lived and died. Whenever Poland shows up in archaeology news, about 50% of the time it's because they found more new vampire graves. Publicized in the first week of June 2023, archaeologists in Poland have excavated what's being called a mass suspected vampire grave. How can they tell? Probably the fact that 450 skeletons casually have their heads lodged between their legs, coins in their mouths, and bricks surrounding them. You know, the usual Polish techniques that were found on other vampire grave sites in that country in 2014 and 2016 and 2017 and 2022 and now in 2023. Suffice to say, after all the other vampire graves, the archaeologists are kind of in the habit of this now and can identify the obvious signs pretty quickly. In a Daily Mail article, archaeologist Maciej Skromski explained that in rural 19th century Poland, it was a common practice to behead vampires. Moreover, the act of placing the coin in the mouth was believed to negate the vampire curse and spreading its disease amongst the living. People also believed that certain types of brick prevented vampires from returning from the dead. In this case, over 30% of the 450 bodies had bricks on them. The archaeologists explained that people believed members of the deceased's family that died shortly after the vampire's funeral might also be vampires. Therefore, after burial, a grave could be dug up and the deceased's head cut off, which was then placed between the legs. But in the case of those who were suspected of being vampires themselves, evidence of decapitation after burial is rare. Take what you will from that. And of course, the very last on our list is the one I'm insanely excited about. They call it Netherlands Stonehenge. Even though the site near Tiel was discovered in 2017, the archaeologists weren't certain about what it was. There's scattered grave sites, mounds, and other fascinating installations. Complicating things further, approximately 200 archaeologists participated in the digs at the site at one time or another, leading to the work not being well coordinated and important findings not always shared. Ultimately, Kristen van der Linde from BAAC Archaeological and History Research pulls it together with this team, and they're able to now confirm the location was an ancient religious complex over 4,500 years ago. When did they confirm this? Drumroll please. 6 days ago. This amazing site, which some are already referring to as the Netherlands Stonehenge, has earned this title quickly because, like Stonehenge, the various features of the complex were carefully built to align with the sun, planets, or stars, or to signal important astronomical events. Also, like Stonehenge, marking the arrival of summer and winter solstice appeared to be a major priority. Archaeologists working at the site have discovered approximately 80 burials so far, and in case I'm not visibly vibrating with excitement yet, one of the graves contained a glass bead that was imported from ancient Mesopotamia, the oldest bead found in the Netherlands, and proof that the Bronze Age trading networks connected Northern Europe with parts of the near ancient East. Despite the tremendous separation in distance, archaeologists have also discovered the remains of animal skeletons, human skulls, and bronze tools and weapons placed in spots close to where the sun shone directly through openings into the complex's central mound. This suggests they're piled up in those locations for ritual purposes, possibly as sacrifices to some ancient forgotten god. It's estimated the site was used as a religious sanctuary for approximately 800 years after its initial construction in the late or early 2nd millennium BC, but it seems occupation continued for a long time after that. Obviously, they've got a lot of work ahead of them to do.
Number 10. Inca mummies. Right off the hop, we got a 3-in-1. Buckle up, folks. March 16th, 1999, right near the summit of Lilialiko, so around 7,000 meters up in the sky, near Argentina and Chile borders. Right all the way up there, ancient history, it appears it was just waiting frozen in the cold. It was waiting in the form of 3 Inca mummies. Further studies found that they were most likely sacrificed in the name of some sort of religious Inca ritual around the year 1500 CE. It's quite a long time ago. They were found in a small opening less than 2 meters under the ground. Now again, this discovery was shocking. They looked like they were just asleep. That's what being frozen does to you. It makes your body look nice and fresh all the time. But in reality, they'd passed around, the 1500s. They're some of the most well-preserved mummies in the world. They now rest at an exhibition in the Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina. So if you're ever in Salta, there you go. Number 9, giant beaver skull. Big beavers, you say? All right, hit that thumbs up. So the Yukon permafrost, it seems to be a hot spot of sorts. As it should be. Lots of ancient animals just got stuck in time, and of course in great condition, lucky for us. Scientific name for giant beavers back then was Castroides ohainus. The giant beaver was on average larger than humans. As Jurassic Park as this thing looks, it only ate pond weeds. It was a gentle giant. He was a fan of the salads, it seems. Hold the beef. You would think otherwise looking at it. It looks like a monster. One of the largest rodents in history, rather. They were probably really cute. I'm not gonna lie, they look kind of nice, at least on Google. 50,000 years ago, they didn't chop down trees, just weeds. It's kind of nice. Smaller beavers outlived them once conditions warmed up. Like others on this list, they moved north. They followed the ideal conditions, and that led them ultimately to their icy demise. That is, well, more often than not, the Yukon permafrost. Number 8, surgeon notebook. All right, all you nerds, get your old textbooks out for this one. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm always so interested. Even in video games, that's not even the boring mission for me, I'm like, yeah, let's find those ancient scrolls. Let's do that first. It feels very national treasure to me to find ancient notes from somebody that they wrote. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon a long time ago. It's over 100 years old, and it was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica. The owner was that of George Levick. He was a photographer and a surgeon who traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This was from 1910 to 1913. Also, what a 2-for-1 combo. Guys, 2 amazing jobs. So different. The book itself was completely frozen shut and the bindings were toast, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. Thanks to that frozen stuff, it actually survived a lot of conditions. You could still read descriptions of photos George took at Cape Adare. That's history right there. Number 7, Antarctica Pyramid. Okay, here we go. A little bit of alien stuff. Why not? Here on Bumblebee, we like talking about the pyramids of Egypt a lot. We're fascinated with all things ancient and history. Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I had to know what was going on. This was back in 2016, where a mountain in Antarctica was trending online all of a sudden. Now, we all immediately thought it was evidence of an ancient civilization because, well, that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're hoping for every time we hit refresh on that history channel. Eric Rignot, a professor of Earth System Sciences at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding. He added the quote, "Pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. So, just a rare anomaly, just a rare frozen anomaly, or I don't know, maybe there's some frozen space aliens." Number 6, Grasshopper Glacier. Yeah, if you aren't a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip to number 5. I will not take it personally. Just hit the thumbs up at least, do something. A glacier in Montana is home to thousands, millions, I don't even want to know how many, grasshoppers and locusts, just all stuck in time right here. Yeah, imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. Huh, what an idiot. Well, appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, this mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct giant grasshoppers. Yeah, they're dead and frozen and gone, but you can still see them, which is not great. These poor guys were traveling to find new life a long time ago, and they must have gotten caught up in some cold winds, and now they're stuck here for another few hundred years. This reminds me of those suckers that have the little insect inside. Who actually buys those, you know what I mean? You see them in gift shops a lot, scorpion inside, like, nice. One lick and I'm done. Number 5. Preserved wolf pup. When this little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago, I bet she had no idea that she'd ever see the sun again. That's a long time ago. Discovered in, you guessed it, Yukon, Canada, Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water out of frozen mud. He was like, hey, wait, stop, hold on. And they found this. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little lady. Also treasured, I take that back. She's also treasured. They did find treasure. X-rays tell us she was only 6 weeks old. X-rays also tell us that she was a fan of fish. That was her meal of choice. She loved eating fish. Poor thing, damn. I'm looking down like it's there. I'm like, we really missed you. All right, close the casket. Let's get out of here. Number 4, frozen treasure. Here we go. Is it a wolf pup or is it actually frozen treasure? Because but he's asking. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is very recent. You know, we don't find these often. Treasure frozen in ice, again, sounds like something out of a video game. I can't help it, this is so intriguing. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across a small box filled with jewels just jammed in the ice. Now, they had to breathe on it a little bit, you know, melt it out, pop it out a little bit, whatever. But once it was done, they reported it to French officers. Now this box contained around 100 precious gems. Precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees, you name it. This box was worth 300,000 US dollars, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, I'm like, that's it, I'm calling in sick. I find a toonie under the ice, I'm like, I'll wait till this melts. Well, since it was discovered on Mont Blanc, officials were able to trace down the lost gems back to an Air India flight that actually crashed on the mountain back in 1966. That's where this came from. The lives of 117 passengers were sadly lost, and because of the harsh conditions, it's been next to impossible to have recovered anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? No one wants to climb and do any of that, it's impossible. Now, somehow these family gems were able to see light again as well, and yes, the owner did return the gems. Thing is, 2 families claimed the goods. I'm surprised there's not more, to be honest with you. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter, Daniel Roche, found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier. So, yeah, some glaciers are filled with bugs, other glaciers filled with gems. So, 50-50 really, you never know what you're gonna get. Just lick and hope. Actually, don't do that, you'll get a sore throat. Number 3, the Glacier Girl. Before you get worried, no, this next one is not a real person at any time. The next one here is a plane, a P-23 aircraft to be specific. It was discovered in Greenland, surrounded of course in ice. Now during World War II in July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and of course low visibility. The crew was saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of a 264 feet bank of snow and ice, and it took years to finally get this plane back out. She's known now as the Glacier Girl, and in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO, Rodney Lewis, he bought that plane. Can you imagine having that kind of money? You're buying ancient frozen planes? Like, it doesn't work, you know that, right? All right, cool, rich guys. Number 2, Blood Red Waterfall. We've all seen that video or photo of the waterfall that's underwater. It's a nice little optical illusion, looks kind of scary. Never want to swim again after seeing that. The Blood Red Waterfall is a little more jarring. On the southern side of our planet, there's a waterfall in Antarctica that is blood red. It is haunting to look at. I don't ever want to see this in person or on the internet again for that matter. The edge of Taylor Glacier, great name for a glacier, my god. This is a one-of-a-kind waterfall that pours into Lake Bonny. So millions of years ago, when sea levels rose up, glaciers naturally formed at the top of the lake. So this melting water that's slowly leaking out from a quarter-mile deep, this water is now 3 times saltier and 3 times as scary to look at. When the iron-rich water then reached the air, it looked bloody. I mean, more than fair. Just seeing photos of this, it's jarring. It looks like there's a lot of healthy iron pouring out of there. Number 1, fish eat fish. This one's kind of funny, you know, funny timing. We gotta finish on a nice, is that a real photo? We gotta finish on one of those. If you know anything about me, it's that I'm not a fan of lakes or oceans or anything underwater. I'm good. Land, beaches, plains, perfect. Let's do that. This video went viral not too long ago and it is very real. These 2 brothers were fishing on Indiana's Wawasee Lake and they saw a pike eating a bass. Only both parties were completely still because they were both already dead and both completely frozen. Mid-meal, this guy's got a fish in his mouth, frozen in time. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We found this. This is a real thing. They posted the original photo and nobody believed that it was real, so they had to follow up and post the video where they actually remove it from the ice. So, totally official. I would also think this is fake too. It looks like a meme that you'll have in the back of a class where it's like, hey, always a bigger fish, don't give up, or something weird like that. Like Will Smith with a thumbs up next to like a glacier. You're like, is this motivation? I don't know, this is weird.
Number 10, the Endurance. This one is just incredible. Enter the time of adventurers, when setting sail with a crew of hardy men, and the hopes of discovery was just the way of life. What to discover? Well, that's anything and anywhere, friends. Their fame and fortune await. This was true of Sir Ernest Shackleton, a man who was seeking his own destiny and adventure. He famously boarded a ship called the Endurance and with a motley crew set sail for the Antarctic waters. Things were going great until they weren't. That's a classic line, isn't it? The ship got stuck in ice, and despite the crew's best efforts, the ship was beginning to lose its fight and sank. Miraculously though, all crew survived, including Shackleton. Pretty amazing story. The ship was lost under the icy waters for years, thought to be lost forever. That was until March of this year, March of 2022, it was found, and even more surprisingly, she was mostly intact and preserved due to the frigid temperatures of the water. Ooh, nice. Number 9, Rosetta Stone. What if I told you the reason why we understand so much of the ancient world and ancient Egypt is because of a small dictator from France who had an ego issue? Sounds fake, right? Well, actually, it's true. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican ogre as he was also known, during his reign of fame and military power, he went on tour in Egypt. And I mean, why not? It's hot, sunny, and you got those pyramids. How can you say no? It's beautiful. Well, like something out of Call of Duty Zombies, Napoleon took his army boys and a couple of egghead archaeologists to uncover the hidden secrets. That's when the Rosetta Stone was found. A large stone tablet that was inscribed 3 times with 3 different languages, but all saying the same thing. Thus, it helped us understand and decipher ancient Egyptian language and unlocked many other secrets as well. Pretty shocking find. Number 8, Pompeii. Imagine a sunny day like any other. You're a Roman citizen walking through a market as it hustles and bustles during a bright afternoon. The smell of small restaurants fill the air. The playful sound of friends chatting away charms the background. Then the ground violently shakes and a thick black ash covers the city. Within a few short hours, like a scene from Revenge of the Sith, lava flows everywhere and the people are buried in burning hot ash and smoke. Oof, no thanks, I don't want the Darth Vader treatment. Pompeii is an interesting story. It wasn't rediscovered in one major excavation, but rather people kept walking over it and going, I wonder what this is. And that's pretty much it. Excavation after excavation eventually led to modern scientists to rediscover the city, and in a quite well preserved state actually, surprisingly. An ancient restaurant was found not too long ago complete with mosaics. That's pretty cool. That's pretty sweet. Number 7, the Terracotta Army. Well, we all have that favorite thing we love. For me, it's video games. I love video games. I'd say comedy, but it's kind of hard to take that with you when you pass away. I'll try though. We'll see. For years, kings and leaders tried their best to take things with them in the afterlife. Egyptians were so worried they had to take their cats and dogs with them. Or at least they tried. They did. Well, very famously, the first emperor of China tried to take a terracotta army with him, or rather an army to protect him in the afterlife. Yes, Emperor Qin was famously buried with soldiers to protect him in the afterlife. Thing is, this wasn't a handful we're talking about, but hundreds in all shapes and sizes, which is really crazy actually. Discovered by farmers attempting to dig a well in 1974, they came to amass a huge burial site with soldiers and cavalry, all with bronze swords that were quickly looted. It makes sense. It's one of the biggest discoveries of all time. In the archaeology department at least. Pretty cool, pretty sick. Number 6, the Nazca Lines. At some point, there was a dude walking in the southern Peruvian desert and saw some lines on the ground and thought, gee, those are some funny looking lines there. Huh. And when he went to a higher elevation and looked back at it, well, it looked like it was a larger image, he must have thought to himself. It's probably nothing. Well, once humans had gained the ability to fly, the images were much clearer. In a large portion of the Peruvian desert are long but shallow trenches dug in the ground. The resulting product is images and that of Mesoamerican drawings of animals, like a spider, a monkey, and a bird, and most recently a cat. It's weird. It's weird animals in the ground. I don't know. It's just kind of strange. Question is, who done it? That is the question. That's always the question for archaeology, isn't it? No one is really sure who done it, actually. And it also begs the question, if you were to dig all these drawings, who would see them but God and or aliens? That's kind of a weird thing to understand. Who would see that? No one's up there back then, right? Strange. Number 5, Titanic. Before 1997, the Titanic was one of those aquatic mysteries. For those that have been captivated by its sinking from stories and tales from survivors, people wanted to know her final resting place. And yes, I know it wasn't 1997, but that was when every person on planet Earth knew what the Titanic was. Thanks to Terminator director James Cameron. Kind of a weird thing to do after Terminator, but okay. And teenage heartthrob Leonardo DiCaprio. And maybe a lady, but you know what I'm talking about. It was actually rediscovered on September 1st, 1985 at 3,500 meters below the ocean's surface, which if you didn't know is pretty deep down there. It's not every day you discover an unsinkable ship thought to be lost forever at the bottom of the ocean. Pretty exciting. Number 4, remains of Richard III. Richard III, the King of England and Ireland, and if you go by how Shakespeare describes him, well, he's a rotten man, he is, sir. A hunchback with an irregular walk. In real life, well, not so much, but that's because Shakespeare wrote it during the time period when the monarch was the monarch to get rid of the monarch that was Richard III's monarch. It's just good politics, it makes sense. Despite what Shakespeare said about him, he still wasn't great. Who was back then? No one really was. During the many years since the Mad King's passing, it seems his remains were lost. Until one day in 2014, his remains were dug up in a parking lot, of all places. Who would have thought? Just where a king like that would have wanted to be. Kinda strange to dig up one of the country's kings on the day of a construction job. It's kinda weird, you know, just average day and you're like, oh, there's a former King of England, cool. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Number 3, Bigus Cheddicus. How many of you folks like cheese? I'm willing to bet it's a lot of you. I know I do. My favorite is mozzarella, especially from a mom and pop pizza shop or homemade Italian cuisine. Oh, baby, it's the best. I'm not Italian, but I love the communities. Watch out, little Italy, here I come. I'm gonna eat all your pizza. In a recent discovery in Egypt, archaeologists came across ancient cheese of all things. Who would have thought? Which may be the oldest cheese ever to be found. Estimated to be 3,200 years old and composed of goat's milk. While it might be tempting to dive in and take a slice of the cheese, yes, as aristocrats are known to do, I would hold back as it is also found to have bacteria called brucellosis, which is not good for your health. It will make you very sick, so don't eat it. Number 2, I think I stepped in something. I personally find it very fascinating when we dig up something from the past, or really just discover anything from the past. For years, that artifact sat there as the world went on. It's a weird thought for me, I don't know. For me, it's even more impressive if the item is in good condition. It helps gives us a better view into the past. Take the 5,000-year-old leather shoe found in an Armenian cave, for example. The laces on this bad boy were still in good condition, which is very impressive. It's a long time. So what's the secret? The shoe was found in a pile of ye olde manure. Supposedly this had some sort of restorative properties on the shoe, although I'm not rushing to try it and I don't recommend anyone else does either. Number 1, Turkish Delight. In 1963, a man was doing renovations on his home. After a trip in 1960s Turkish Home Depot, he began his work. After knocking down a wall, he found a hidden room, which then led to a tunnel. And that tunnel led to the lost city of Derinkuyu. Yes, this man had a whole ancient city right underneath him. Honey, there's an ancient city beneath us! The city proved to be massive, with an estimated population of 20,000 people, complete with livestock. They weren't there, obviously, it's just what they thought it would hold. So for those of our viewers living in older homes, make sure to check behind your walls. You may have some secrets hidden there. Ooh, wouldn't that be cool?
So let's start off with a bit of a classic to warm us up, the Terracotta Warriors. When laborers digging a well in China in 1974 discovered a life-size statue of a soldier, they had no idea how much more lay beneath them. Archaeologists started excavating and today think there are as many of 8,000 of these clay statues. Most are warriors, but there are full-sized horses and chariots as well, also dancers and acrobats. All figures have their own facial expressions and features unique to them. This vast terracotta army testifies the absolute power and great ambitions of the first emperor of China. Qin Shi Huangdi, who is buried in the tomb at the site, hasn't been excavated because of concerns about its stability. But if his burial record is any indicator, there are enough traps inside to make for an effective enough curse, notwithstanding the alleged curse the emperor himself placed on it. After all, it did take 700,000 workers 36 years to build this tomb, and supposedly many of those workers were buried alive inside to keep what's inside there a secret. And it's worked, no one knows what's in there. There's also the matter of the potentially cursed terracotta army. According to an interview on Swiss Info with one of the many men who accidentally discovered the emperor's army, there's a widespread belief that these statues were never meant to be seen by other men, and that would bring great misfortune onto the surrounding villages, all because it was a major disruption of the dead emperor's feng shui. While the Chinese government continues to protect the actual tomb, it will remain a mystery what sort of protection the emperor took with himself to the grave. How about a scary discovery and scary consequence? Tamerlane's tomb. As written in Atlas Obscura, Soviet scientist Mikhail Gerasimov woke up one day feeling spicy and felt like digging up a horrific conqueror Tamerlane to reconstruct his bashed-in face. So, ignoring the outcry of religious leaders, locals, Muslim clergy, literally anyone, these curious yet emotionally stunted anthropologists opened the tomb for the first time since 1941. Also ignoring 2 consecutive warnings on the tomb itself, not two. The first is in plain sight outside of it. When I rise from the dead, the whole world shall tremble. The second was a surprise hidden within the tomb itself that nobody had opened before these dummies. And it said, "Whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." Freaky. So naturally, they cracked the bad boy sarcophagus open. No consequences on the spot means none at all, right? 3 days later, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa and invades Russia. Few would argue that the push-broom mustache dictator would qualify as an invader more terrible than Tamerlane. Those that dispute the curse point out that Operation Barbarossa was always planned and subtly underway before the opening of the tomb, which is all well and good, but in 1942, Stalin demanded the return of Temur to his tomb since the body had been taken. When the body was finally returned and buried with full Islamic rites, the Battle of Stalingrad's advantage shifted, changing the course for the Russians to win. So who knows, right? I think your own sudden imminent death counts as a scary discover. So, if so, King Casimir counts. And 50 years after the mysterious circumstances surrounding King Tut's exhumation, a similar incident occurred in Poland at the tomb of Jagiellon, where the King Casimir rests. Poland was a socialist country at the time of exhumation, so many types of research were restricted. It wasn't easy to receive an agreement to examine historical sites, and it took the Cardinal Archbishop of Krakow to support the researchers who were just dying to get their hands on the shriveled corpse of the king, and for the final decision to be his to allow the opening of the tomb. Wrong call! Little did they know what they'd stumble upon. Researchers were eager to figure out more after the king's death 500 years ago, and they dug right in. It was worldwide news, as was the curse that the researchers kept joking about that was supposed to take their lives. Unfortunately for them, funny anecdotes become prophecies. As the examination was in process, those involved started to die from strokes and infections. Within the first few days, 4 are dead. Within years, around 15 are dead. Yeah, turns out they discovered deadly mold, the same as in Tut's tomb. As many historians have quietly mumbled about, there's always the possibility that maybe, just maybe, that mold wasn't something that grew over time, but was placed by a clever mixologist. Call Guinness World Records because this tomb has the most curses per square foot dead body paradise. Saqqara is genuinely called the ancient city of the dead, and you may have heard of it since it's right up there with King Tut for Egyptian burial site hotspots to visit. Its origin traces all the way back to the First Dynasty, where it hosted burials for more than 3,000 years before seeing its last ceremony and resting sealed for centuries. And with how Egyptian family goes, 3,000 years of royal burials can accumulate quite the cast of characters, many of whom would want to protect themselves and their riches in the afterlife. Essentially, when archaeologists got down there, they had to send the most cynical, non-spiritual MFs they had. There is so much buried there that they turned up over 160 different sarcophagi and countless precious artifacts. Not complete without a few curses inscribed, of course, to prevent grave robbers or genuinely F up anyone who enters the chamber. Akhmahor's sarcophagus essentially warns that whatever's done against his tomb, the same shall be done onto your property. It also warns that any impure trespassers will be filled with the fear of seeing ghosts. Seriously, immerse yourself in excavating here though, surrounded by 160 mummies deep in the earth, curses and condemnations? Nah. How about a recent discovery that shows us there's still so much out there? The Notre Dame tombs. This month 4 years ago. Pause. 2019 was 4 years ago. Let me sit with that for a second. Whew, okay, well, in April of 2019, many of us opened our phones or turned on our TVs to a massive shock. The Notre Dame was burning. The 12th century Gothic cathedral was saved by 500 plus firefighters, but had a major structural damage. French authorities call in archaeologists to help make sense of the damage and how to start repairs. They find something else. 2 coffins, sculptures, statues, and unseen architecture. After months of research and scans, they figure out one identity because it turns out to be written on the outside the whole time. Antoine de Pelaporte, a high priest who died in 1710 at 83. In the 300 years since he was buried, his coffin was damaged and allowed air to enter, so he was mostly bones and some bits of hair instead of a mummy. The other coffin is Mr. Unknown, and he's rocking mummy vibes. Check him out. He died between ages 25 and 40 from TB, and his pelvic bone region suggests he was a horseback rider. To be buried in the Notre, he's obviously an aristocrat, and he was buried with a flower crown, which is super cute. Both men were buried in lead sarcophagi, which was a practice reserved for the elite. Still, the 2 coffins are also quite different from each other, and this shocking find tells us the Notre is still full of secrets to uncover, and if there's 2, there's safe to assume there's more. A Grecian cemetery holds terrible secrets at the bottom of a well. The Karmikos cemetery dates all the way back to the Bronze Age, so around 2700 BCE. It was first excavated by archaeologists in 1870, and since since 1930, excavations have continued and thousands of tombs uncovered. As you can imagine, through years of excavations, lots of messed up things have been discovered in said tombs. Weird bodies, weird deaths, buried alive, and now in 2020, a collection of 30 inscribed lead tablets were found at the bottom of a well that's 2,500 years old. Which sounds creepy enough as is, but the tablets each bear individual curses and prayers to Greek gods of the underworld. AKA it's like Grecian culty Satanism stuff, as well as the fact that the well was poisoned and in the middle of a tomb yard. Jutta Strokazek, who led the excavation, said that whoever ordered the curses inscribed on the tablets was unnamed, but the black magic is present and there for all to see, even if forbidden in Greece at the time. And while the well was only just found in 2016, as mentioned, the site was first excavated in 1870. But progress halted when World War II broke out, as all members of the excavation team joined the forces, and then every single one died back to back to back. While it's hard to pin that on the curse itself, it does follow the trend set by King Tut and Casimir. A recent discovery changes the history of the Philippines, the Los Milania tombs. Our world still has discoveries to be made, and archaeologists have proven that when they unearthed the remnants of an 1,000-year-old village on a jungle mountaintop in the Philippines. I'd say this is more of a shocking tomb discovery than scary. I'm just excited about this. The game changer is the discovery of limestone coffins, a type that's never been found before in Southeast Asia. This is huge because it's the first indication that Filipinos at the time in history practiced more advanced burial rituals than previously thought, and that they had metal tools to carve these coffins, which we didn't know before. While they're similar to ancient sarcophagi, the tombs differ by being simple, without elaborate decoration or images on the tops or sides. They're just a plain, classy box. And a tooth extracted from one of the skeletons, carbon data confirm they are about 1,000 years old, with 15 graves found in total. Overall, this site is described as a complex archaeological site with both habitation and burial remains from a period of approximately 10th to 14th century. It's the first kind in the Philippines having these limestone advancements. Malalaini tourism officer Sammy Cortez says after the archaeologists have finished their work, they're gonna open this up as an archaeological site you can visit, the same as the Tut's tomb. For my Twilight fans, you may get your kissing a vampire fantasy, seeing as there are vampire graves in Bulgaria. And it's not even like one, there's a couple. Archaeologists in Bulgaria have uncovered a 13th century corpse at Perpirkion, an ancient Thratican site in the south of the country, belonging to a man in his 40s who had the misfortune of a big ol' iron rod stomped through his ribcage with the purpose of keeping the corpse from rising from the dead and disturbing the living. Oh, and his left leg had also been removed and placed next to the corpse. Insult to injury, they're making sure he can't go anywhere. At the time of the man's death, vampires were perceived as a real threat in many Eastern European and Balkan communities. People who died usually from things like taking their own lives or being fine one day and dying the next in their sleep, for example, were sometimes staked to prevent them coming back from the dead because it was an unnatural death. Amongst the Romani people, anyone who was missing a finger, had an appendage similar to those of an animal, or had a horrible appearance, yikes if you're ugly, was regarded as someone who is dead. In Russia, those who talked to themselves were suspected of being a vampire in nature, so I guess I might be a vampire because that's essentially kind of what I'm doing right now, isn't it? To date, nearly 100 skeletons have been found across Bulgaria, nailed into their coffin with iron stakes or with heavy bricks and stones placed in open mouths. As I've mentioned in many of my recent demon and ghost videos, if multiple cultures report the same creature and the same method of execution for the thing, even before meeting each other, I'm inclined to maybe believe this was real. This tomb hides dirty laundry and family secrets, the New Grange and Douth tombs. It starts with a dirty story. 11th century Meath County, Ireland, a salacious folktale is passed down for 4,000 years, saying an ancient king who hailed from the tribe of the gods did some stuff with his sister on the winter solstice as part of a magical ritual to restart the sun's daily cycle and save the world from endless night. Supposedly, the deed was done in one of the country's huge burial mounds, which the locals have named the Hill of Sin. The hill is now called Douth Passage, a close neighbor and connected to the New Grange Passage. Its entries are marked with large stones, and on every winter solstice, the sun shines through and lights up the innermost burial chamber. This is supposed to be the result of the magical act that the king performed there. And nearly 1,000 years after the local legend was first written down, ancient DNA suggests to discover that at least part of the story, naturally the grossest part, was actually true. See, the New Grange Passage is a tomb of over 150 kilometers for a well-connected family according to an ancient DNA analysis. Like a prehistoric version of the Habsburgs, this extended group of relatives seems to have ruled Ireland and maintained its connected dynasties for centuries within the family. Rulers only tend to marry their siblings in societies where the king is actually considered a god, whose perceived divinity exempts them from social custom. The winter solstice claim probably helped these rulers support their godly claim and rally effort it took to move 200,000 tons of rock to build a passage like the New Grange. That's something the pharaohs of Egypt, the kings of pre-colonial Hawaii, and the Inca emperors had in common. This cave tomb discovery is a new breed of human, Homo floresiensis. Once upon a time, on the isolated Isle of Flores, Indonesia, there lived a colony of little people. Very little people. Liang Pananing is a cave on the island of Sulawesi that is part of an island grouping called Wallachia, which ancient humans traveled through at least 50,000 years ago as a meeting point for the major admixture mating event between the Denisovans and the modern humans on their initial journey to Oceania. Here, anthropologists find 7 remains of 3-foot-tall humans with brains the size of grapefruits, suggesting these 18,000-year-old specimens weren't a quirk of ancient Homo hominin, but rather an entire species of miniature people who existed and overlapped with modern Homo sapiens. Although the odd little humans likely left no descendants and therefore no mark on human biology now, scientists say this is the first documentation of an entirely new species of Homo hominins that apparently adapted and lived for thousands of years in caves on the isolated island. As for their size, their limited habitat and its hot humid conditions may have been the key factors. They may have arrived on the island as African or Asian Homo erectus and their generation shrank over time. Genetic size adaptation would make sense for survival. Similar factors were also at play for the pint-sized stegodon elephant, whose remains were also found in the cave with the tiny people. Evidence suggests that they hunted the miniature elephant-like creatures in groups. Imagine being the person who uncovers a tiny race of humans. Now that is a discovery, and I'm gonna be keeping up to date with this one.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Western camel bones. Scientific name being Camelops hesternus, meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. There's a fun fact. Now these bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek. It was only 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when all of a sudden they stumbled across these massive bones, ancient bones. The last time these bones were operating on, actual limbs was 75 to 125,000 years ago. Isn't that incredible? The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding conditions. It was so cold that scientists could actually still extract DNA, which told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. Yeah, we had more camels. Now we don't have many camels. Sad. The more camels, the better. Number 9, Allen Hills meteorite. Alright, this one's for all the space nerds. This next one is literally out of this world. Back in December 1984, American meteor hunters discovered this fragment in Allen Hills, Antarctica. Now this meteor was appropriately named Allen Hills 48001, which is okay, that's right to the point. Now this rock was speculated to come from Mars, and in 1996 a scientist claimed that he discovered bacteria from the microscopic fossils on this meteorite. Now the news of course spread quickly and everybody started to lose their minds. Rightfully so, this is a while ago. Bill Clinton even chimed in. He made a speech about possible discoveries in space with aliens and shit. The scientific community later said this was not the case after further studies, but never say never. Feels like we're getting closer to finding life now with James Webb. I don't know, every time I click refresh, it's like, check out this thing that's in the past. I'm like, what? Number 8, more meteorites. For this one, we'll switch it up. This time, scientists found ice in meteorite. Nice, it's always a good time. James Webb is about to hopefully show us how much water is in space, and I personally am not ready for it. Back in 1990, after the 094 meteorite was discovered in the Algerian mountains, the rock was dated back to 4.6 billion years ago. So scientists studied the meteorite with synchrotron radiation-based X-ray nanotomography, leading scientists to find evidence of tiny pores. Pores believed to have been fossilized ice crystals. That's fun. That's, again, space aliens with water. Who knows? Hopefully. These pores have come from when the meteorite crossed the snow line in space. Now the snow line is a sphere around the sun. It's the exact point where ice on meteorites melts. It's pretty cool. The study was to hopefully find out where water comes from in that galaxy, and it seems that it came from a lot further than we all thought, which is comforting, I guess. Yeah, there's water in space. It's just, way the fuck out there. Number 7, viruses. We're all talking about an ancient virus that's coming back now, some ancient mummified frozen virus. Sounds like we're doomed. Just over a year ago in China, scientists discovered an ancient virus. These samples came from the Tibetan Plateau, and the samples were originally collected back in 2015. Now the contents date back to around 14,400 years ago, long before Captain America went into the ice. And there's dust, gases, and of course, viruses over that long accumulated time, and glaciers just soaked it all in, right? layer after layer, pushing history deeper into its icy core until scientists come in with a few mega drills. Now we're finding dinosaurs, we're finding bones, and also sometimes we find 33 viruses. Yeah, 33! That's like 2 more than my family computer had growing up. That's a lot of viruses. 4 of these viruses typically infect bacteria, and the rest were novel, which means that it's never been seen before. Yeah, how neat is that? Novel viruses. Just what the world needs right now. Number 6, Ötzi the Iceman. Discovered in September 1991, this mummy was found on the border of Austria and Italy. He's Europe's oldest known natural mummy. It's pretty amazing. He was covered in ice shortly after his death, so most of the 45-year-old man from the Copper Age was left in rather good condition. A 5,000-year-old man was found in ice. You know, you lose this round, Captain America. Again, I'm just saying. I really thought I'd put you on this list. Not this time. Before we passed in the Italian Alps, Ötzi had a number of health problems, it seems, that we've now found many years later. He had arthritis, Lyme disease, and he was lactose intolerant. Thanks to science, we now know that Ötzi the Iceman was sharpening his tools right before his death. So he fought till the end. What an OG. Number 5, underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on B. You know, I do my best, specifically underwater footage. I know that gives us all the creeps. We love exploring the deeps for some reason, and this next one I couldn't believe, honestly. You're about to see footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier, so buckle up. This glacier is the size of Florida, so if it collapses at any point in our time, our sea levels could rise 10 feet. And in 2019, researchers drilled 2,300 feet through the middle of Thwaites Glacier. Then they dropped a robot with a camera right down, and they saw this. For the first time ever, we've now seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true, and I can't agree more. It's her walking on the moon moment, and I could not agree more. This feels like another universe almost. This looks like the upside down. This is terrifying. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor, so think about that when you sleep tonight. Number 4, message in a bottle. Back in 1959, a geologist named Paul Walker, no, not that one, not even close, he decided to bury a message in a bottle, and he wanted to make a lasting statement about climate change, so he put this frozen message underneath rocks near a glacier in 1959, and then cut to 2013, well, what do we find again? We find Paul Walker's message in a bottle. The message inside was measurements, and to be exact, it was the length from the exact point of the bottle to the edge of a nearby glacier. But by 2013, many years later, said glacier had shrunk down 200 feet, so now the glacier was much further. A lasting statement indeed, I would say. Good call, Paul Walker. Number 3, Ice Age art. More ancient artwork, but this time we're going to the Colombian Amazon. Now the thing is, unlike other drawings found on the ceilings of tombs or anything like that, this frozen canvas stretches about 8 miles. It's incredible. The paintings inside, they're even more impressive. Dating back to 12,000 years ago, these were made near the end of the last ice age. Thousands of paintings, by the way, not just a handful of arrows, nothing like that, just a huge canvas. These were found in 2017, so pretty recently, but it was only last year where they finally went public with these Arctic findings. Now the findings being, you know, paintings of elephants, massive sloths, horses from the ice age, snakes, birds, deer, that kind of stuff. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America. Yeah, pregnant women or the origins of the Ninja Turtles? I don't know. I'm on the fence, you tell me. Number 2, the Glacier Girl. Now before you get worried, no, this next one is not a real person. This next one is a plane. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland surrounded in ice. Now during World War II in July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and of course low visibility. Now the crew was thankfully saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for now 50 years. Recently it was dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice. It took years to get this plane back up, but now she of course is known as the Glacier Girl, and in 2017 Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis, he bought this plane. Yeah, they just brought a plane out of the ice and this guy's like, yeah, I'll buy it, debit, no problem. And finally, number 1, a preserved mammoth cub. In 2010, a mummified mammoth cub was discovered in Siberia, right off the coast of Oyogos, named after a nearby village. Yuka, this newfound cub, is now the best preserved mammoth cub discovered in history. Now this was a fascinating find that should have never been seen again, let alone found in such great condition. It's kind of haunting when you look at it. It still looks alive, you know what I mean? But apparently that's not the end of woolly mammoths. Who knew? It was announced only months ago that a team of scientists and entrepreneurs over at a company called Colossal, they're now planning to bring the woolly mammoth back to life. For Reasons, for science reasons. The last mammoth to walk the planet alive was around 10,500 years ago, but what if they were alive today? Colossal raised over $15 million, and now they're working on reviving that woolly mammoth. They're doing this to ideally decelerate the melting of the Arctic permafrost and to save modern elephants from extinction, and of course, to advance CRISPR editing.
Let's start with how everything we knew is now wrong. The oldest known practice changed, because archaeologists may have uncovered evidence for the oldest known practice of mummification. Human remains interred 8,000 years ago in the Sado Valley of Portugal appear to have been deliberately treated for mummification prior to burial, making them the first evidence of Mesolithic mummification in Europe. The Sado Valley remains, uncovered in the early 1960s, have very little soft tissue at all, making visible identifiers of mummification not so apparent. Although obviously deliberately placed, the burials had been considered pretty straightforward. The remains were brought to the National Museum of Archaeology in Portugal along with the sketches and some rather poor quality photographs of the site, which limited the follow-up study all those years later. Recently, however, following the death of archaeologist Manuel Farina dos Santos, 3 rolls of films were recovered from his personal effects. The images captured therein were of exceptional quality and allowed the 2022 research team to conduct a more in-depth analysis that had not been possible previously. The results of these experiments could then be compared to the Sado Valley remains, and even without soft tissue, the remains of one individual showed definitive signs of mummification. These included hyperflexed limbs, an absence of disarticulation, and rapid sediment infill around bones. In January of 2022, it was announced a big ol' mummy family had been found. Hidden in a fire-scorched structure off of the Nile is a 2,000-year-old family tomb, and inside, 30 mummies of various ages. Though the archaeologists have yet to date the tomb, they suspect a single family buried their dead in it over generations spanning from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. That's 1st century BC to the 2nd or 3rd century AD. Some of the mummies were very well preserved, while others had their bandages and cartonnage cut by ancient robbers. This new tomb, which was made up of 4 deeply excavated chambers, is one of more than 300 recently discovered surrounding the mausoleum of Aga Khan. And while most of the other tombs were found underground or dug into rocky hills, this particular tomb was an above-ground structure, which the researchers think likely was used as a place of sacrifice, thus the flame-burned walls, animal bones, plant remains, and offering tables. Archaeologists and researchers alike insist this is merely only the beginning of their discoveries. Guess what, y'all? New Saqqara tomb dropped! Saqqara, for those who don't know, was an active burial ground for more than 3,000 years and is a designated UNESCO heritage site. It sits at what was once the ancient Egyptian capital of Memphis and is home to more than a dozen pyramids, including the Step Pyramid, near where the shaft containing the newest discovered mummy was found. Archaeologists say they have found a gold leaf covered mummy sealed inside a sarcophagus that has not yet been opened for 4,300 years. The mummy, the remains of a man named Hekafshepes, is thought to be one of the oldest and most complete non-royal corpses ever found in Egypt. It was discovered down a 50-foot shaft at Saqqara, where 3 other tombs also were. The largest of the mummies is Kanamgadajif, a priest, inspector, and supervisor of nobles. Next was Mary, who was a senior palace official given the title of secret keeper, and the last was a judge and writer named Fatek. Several other items, including pottery, have also been found among the tombs. All of the finds date to the 5th and 6th dynasties of the Old Kingdom, approximately 25 to 2100 BCE. In addition to the mummies, the excavation revealed statues, wall paintings, amulets, tools, and potteries. Hawass is especially interested in a variety of statues uncovered during the dig, as they offer insight into the art of the Old Kingdom. Speaking of Saqqara, everyone wanted to sit at Teti's table. A century after the discovery of King Tut's tomb made headlines around the world, in the sweltering desert heat outside of Cairo, archaeologists have found a giant trove of ancient coffins and mummies, along with the ceramic amulets believed to have been used in burial rituals and thick papyrus documents so big that they're full of secrets. Egyptologist Zahi Hawass told NBC News on November 2nd of 2022 that the site contained countless artifacts related to the pharaoh King Teti and his followers who worshipped him as a god for over 1,000 years after his death. Obviously, being worshipped as a god, this is the guy you want to be buried next to, right? Even the remains of King King Tut's closest generals and advisors were at the site, which sits about 20 miles south of the North African national's capital. I really believe that this year and next year, this site is going to be the most important site in Egypt, said Hawass, obviously referring to the network of underground rooms hidden 65 feet beneath the oldest pyramids in Egypt. I always say that we found until only now 30% of our monuments are still there. 70% are buried underneath the ground. Adding in that his team had also found close to 300 coffins in the vicinity of the pyramid this year alone. Next is the most bizarre story yet. It's out to lunch. First reported on February 25th of 2023. This headline definitely turned some heads, including mine. A man stopped for drinking publicly in a park in Peru was also found to be in possession of more than just a container of beer. Juan Cesar Bajero, 26, had a 600 to 800-year-old mummy in a cooler bag style backpack. Makes sense to have since he's a food delivery person, but what doesn't make sense is cramming a mummy into it and showing it off to two of your friends while in the park on a casual Saturday. When asked by police to justify the presence of the mummified corpse in his bag, Juan's response was, "I take care of her, and she takes care of me." Apparently, he's also named her Juanita and started calling her his spiritual friend. It's unclear how the man came to be in possession of the mummy. Mummification was a common practice among several cultures in Peru before the arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century. In November of 2021, archaeologists in Peru had discovered a mummy believed to be up to 1,200 years old in an underground tomb, so really any earthquake, landslide, or curious cave explorer could just stumble across a mummy there. Joke's on Juan, however, authorities say the mummy is believed to be a male. Unless that doesn't bother him. Anyways, it's now in possession of Peru's Ministry of Culture, and Juan has been charged with illegal possession of historical patrimony and could face 5 years in jail. Next up is a timestamp error. Oops! Made a carbon dating error. Now we have to rewrite all of mummy history. Just a regular Tuesday. Kind of the case with the mummy Kwemi, a high-ranking aristocrat that was discovered in 2019 and assumed to be only a few thousand years old at first, but howdy doody, in 2022, it's proven to be far older than previously thought, and we are talking one of the oldest Egyptian mummies ever unearthed. It dates to the Old Kingdom, demonstrating that mummification processes were highly advanced 4,000 years ago, which is 1,000 years earlier than previously thought. This tomb now suggests that ancient Egyptians living during the time of the Old Kingdom between 2700 BC and 2200 BC were already carrying out sophisticated burials. The intricacy of the body's mummification method and materials, particularly its very fine linen dressing and high-quality resin, was supposed to have taken 1,000 years for them to be able to produce. Professor Salima Ikram, who's head of Egyptology at the American University in Cairo, told The Observer magazine this would completely turn over our understanding of the evolution of mummification on its head. The materials used, their origins, and trade routes associated with them dramatically impact our understanding of the Old Kingdom Egypt. If this is indeed an Old Kingdom mummy, all books about mummification and the history of the Old Kingdom would need to be revised. Meet the Peruvian pre-Inca mummy, more than 1,000 years old and found on the outskirts of the modern capital. November of 2021. The mummy was probably a youngerish person from what they've gathered, and found in an underground tomb wrapped in a funerary bundle along with ceramics and rope, naturally including little bits of skin and hair around, While best known for the mountaintop of Machu Picchu, Peru was home to various pre-Hispanic cultures that thrived in the centuries before the Incan Empire rose to power. The mummy was discovered about 200 meters from where the first mummy of Cajamarquilla was found, explained the archaeologist Yomira Huaman. This particular archaeological site is where the remains of 20 people who were apparently sacrificed about 800 to 1200 years ago were found. This recent discovered mummy in particular lived between 1100 and 1200 years ago and might have belonged to the Lima or Ichima culture. Cajamarquilla complex features the ruins of 4 pyramids and other constructions such as walls laid out like mazes, apartment buildings. The complex is the second largest mud brick city in Peru and was possibly occupied by people from the coast and the Andean highlands. Never thought I'd see the day. It's the Van Gogh mummy? Emphasize on that question mark because that's just straight weird, but he does, in some people's opinion, bear resemblance to one of the unnamed 35 mummified bodies that were found during the restorative work on the Church of the Assumption of Our Lady in Quinto Village. The burials were unearthed in 2011 when part of the floor of the church was removed to install a heating system. Imagine being one of the workers finding that while tearing up floorboards. All mummified bodies were then stored in the chapel of the church until a 2014 project was finally launched to study and restore the collection, and a lab was created on site. Mummified naturally thanks to the very dry soil, the bodies date from 18th until mid-19th century based on the clothing of the mummies. In the region of Aragon, which Quinto belongs to, there were several epidemics. In the 18th century, smallpox and yellow fever ravaged the region. In the 19th century, it was cholera that claimed lives, so it's likely disease was the primary cause of these people's demise. According to Raffaella Biccacciui, a bioanthropologist in the legal medicine section of the University of Turin, the mummy's excellent state of preservation allows for a minimally invasive, in-depth study of skeletal and soft tissue pathologies. They plan to share their findings at the World Congress on Mummy Studies. By that time, we hope we can give a name to the Van Gogh mummy and more about his life. Look out, James Bond, here comes Gold Tongue. So, it was December of 2021 when archaeologists unearthed 2 tombs, one of which had never been opened, a huge rarity in ancient Egyptian standards, and they contained the mummified remains of a man and woman who died about 2,500 years ago. The sealed tomb held the mummified remains of the man and included items such as a scarab amulet, 4 canopic jars, and more than 400 pieces of funerary figures. The mummy's face was also well preserved, with a golden leaf tongue inside its mouth. In ancient Egypt, embalmers sometimes crafted tongues from gold foil and placed them inside the mouths of the dead to enable them to speak with the god Osiris. But these have only been found in archaeological sites in Alexandria and El Balnasa. The other tomb, which had already been raided by grave robbers around the time of its actual burial, held a sarcophagus in the shape of a woman, and the mummified remains were just trashed. 2 more gold tongues were found though, one inside the woman's mouth. The 3 gold tongues found in the tomb date to the Roman period that began in 30 BCE, and scientists hope these new discoveries will allow them to better understand the funerary rites observed during this time period. And now for what I feel may be the most exciting on the list, the Ming mummy. Chinese road workers stumbled upon an astonishing find in 2011. While digging several feet into the ground during an excavation of a road, they unexpectedly hit a large solid object about 6 feet below the surface. Uncovering it further, they got that oh crap realization and called in the big dogs. Subsequent investigations revealed that the object was found in Taizhou was in fact a Chinese tomb, containing a 3-layered coffin within its walls and a remarkably intact remains of a woman from the Ming Dynasty dating back 700 years. As the archaeologists opened the main coffin, they were greeted by layers of silk and linen, smells of oil and perfume, and a brown clear liquid that I'm sure the Victorians would have probably slurped up with a crazy straw during their Egyptomania phase. The archaeologists who excavated the coffin, however, were unable to determine whether the mysterious brown liquid was used intentionally to preserve the body, or if it was somehow groundwater that seeped in over time and mixed with stuff. Either way, these are some astonishingly well preserved remains of a woman, complete with her body, hair, skin, clothes, and jewelry. Even her eyebrows and eyelashes are impeccably preserved, revealing remarkable details about her appearance from centuries ago. Since the discovery, she has come to be known as the Taizhou mummy, aka the accidental mummy. The best part, this woman was not meant to be a mummy. While most mummies discovered today are products of complex process, natural mummification has occurred in rare instances. The Taizhou mummy is an extraordinary example of this, distinguished by its exceptional state of preservation and enigmatic background.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Pompeii Chariot. Nothing like finding a sweet ride from ancient times. Once a thriving, beautiful city in ancient Rome, Pompeii was sadly destroyed in 79 AD. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius buried the ancient city in volcanic ash. Excavations, of course, didn't begin until much later, during the 18th century, and after an entire century of careful searching, the city was reopened to the public once again. All was lost during that fateful eruption, but we're slowly recovering more and more. For example, a 2,000-year-old chariot is pretty sweet. The decorations on the side are quite beautiful. They look like flower decorations, and according to Eric Poehler, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, this chariot was for the highest class. He calls it the Lamborghini of chariots. I still can't drive. Nice. Number 9. Pompeii Restaurant. Table for 8? Perfect. Another addition to the list has to be another find from Pompeii. This is the first time in history where hot food and drink eatery has been unearthed. Yeah, in case you're wondering right now, fast food was also tempting the finest back in the 1st century. Yeah, we found a restaurant in 2019, but we were too busy talking about the Avengers to care about it. The meal of the day was most likely honey roasted rodents. Yeah, that's our best guess. Archaeologists have gathered clues to find out what 12,000 people were rushing to eat every single day. Honey roasted rodents. Nice. Rolls off thy tongue, some would say. In typical human fashion, the restaurant is now open again. It's the same place. Yep, don't forget to tip. It's bad juju. Please don't tip. You have to tip. You have to. Number 8. Turkey Gladiator Arena. Yes, another arena, another staple in history filled with gruesome combat in the name of entertainment. An 1800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020. We were all still, inside watching Ozark. Meanwhile, a 90-meter wide amphitheater was found in the ancient city of Mastura. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Colosseum, just, a lot of bad stuff. It was to host these massive professional gladiator fights with a lot of wild animals. They were involved doing bad stuff. This was around 200 AD when the Severian dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd have to travel to this place. This is where you'd want to go. Yeah, hope you have trail shoes on and great knees. Ugh, I'm getting weak just looking at those hills. My patellas are like, no, I don't want to go. Can we go to Rome, please? Number 7. The Great Treasurer. Ta-Mwish had a pretty sweet job back in 1200 BC. He was the head of treasury under Ramses II, aka Ramses the Great, the third pharaoh of Egypt's 19th dynasty. He once ruled from 1279 to 1213 BC, and about a year ago we found his royal scribe's tomb. And it's pretty fancy. It's very fancy. The site also includes tombs of other statesmen from the 19th dynasty, of course buried in Saqqara, Giza. In typical tomb fashion, Cairo archaeologists found writings and drawings that tell us more about Egypt's time under the ruling of Ramses the Great. And it looks nothing like any of the graffiti we have today. Where art is gone. Natural history of art and stuff, it's just we've lost that. Now we have Twitter. That's how we're gonna be remembered by. Twitter and sporks. That's all we'll find in thousands of years. Number 6. The lost city of Heraklion. Before it was discovered in 2001, the ancient city of Heraklion was barely mentioned in texts throughout history. Yet archaeologist Frank Gaudio still found it. What an OG. It was hiding in the depths, around 7 kilometers off the coast, and it was pretty obvious that it was an ancient city because, well, there were 64 shipwrecks, and 700 anchors, and 16-foot statues just hanging about. One vessel was around 80 feet long. It was a classical Greek flat-bottomed ship, with oars on both sides and a massive sail. It was a bit hard to find this wreck, seeing as it was hidden. It was hidden 15 feet under the collapsed temple of Amun. Good problems, I'd say, there's treasure in the way of finding that treasure. Where do I even start? A project led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, a lot of words, obviously kept searching, so they also found a 4th century Greek funerary area. Yeah, ancient graveyards underwater. Guy, watch a movie. This is how you get cursed. Let's move on. Number 5, Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail, and it claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. Pretty tragic. The Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628, and at this time it was considered a high-tech warship. It was referred to as spectacular. Yeah, they even said it with that accent. Spectacular. I don't even know what accent that was, but they said it like that. So what happened here? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, made it all off balanced, and the second rush of wind completely sank it. No combat, nothing. No icebergs popping out of nowhere. It just sank. There was a crowd around watching the entire thing. They were watching this great, glorious send-off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed, during the rushed process to make it look spectacular or whatever, they were too heavy, so the ship sank. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, who was King Gustav II. So when the wreck was rediscovered in 1961, I say recent, this is pretty recent, 95% of the wood was still perfectly intact. Yeah, I had to talk about this. This is amazing. Humans are focusing too much on naval warfare rather than if the ship can actually, stay afloat. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans. Number 4. Luxor tombs. Oh man, I wish this happened while I was in high school. I would have done so many projects on this as it unfolded. That would have been sweet. Back in 2014, quite recent, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old tomb from the 11th dynasty tucked away in, you guessed it, Luxor, Egypt. That's like the ultimate find right there. A Spanish archaeologist found the tomb belonging to the leader from the 11th dynasty. And it was pretty obvious this was somebody from the royal family. Officials believe the tomb may have been used as a mass grave, due to the large amounts of human remains found inside. That's definitely one way to tell, that's for sure helpful. It's important to note that this tomb had also been used during the 17th dynasty later on, because tools and utensils from that time were also found, that were not in existence from prior. See, humans can share, even mass graves. Sometimes. Number 3. Cursed tablet. Super recent discovery right here, small but mighty. This tablet comes in at just 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. Discovered only a month ago in the West Bank, this artifact has historians scratching their heads because it's a couple hundred years older than any Hebrew texts. It predates the Dead Sea Scrolls by 1,350 years. So it's pretty old. The ancient letters meant to call God onto anybody who breaks this curse. This little curse. There's around 40 proto-alphabetic letters, early Hebrew writing, all folded onto this little lead tablet. The fact that the small tablet mentions the curse of Yahweh is pretty alarming. Like, what are the odds that we found this exact part? This sediment comes from excavations done in the 80s on Mount Ebal, so many believe this is from the ancient stone structure Joshua's altar, which is dated around 1200 BC. Yeah, a little tablet from the Mountain of Curses. Yeah, just what we need right now. Awesome. Keep it up, guys. Great work. Number 2, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Israel Antiquities Authority believe they have found the oldest woven basket in history. This basket comes from the Neolithic period, some 10,000 years ago, which is pretty impressive. This basket is made of woven reeds. It predates pottery in the region, and due to the area's hot, dry climate, the basket was able to stay in remarkable shape all this time. It was a pretty nice find in something called the Cave of Horrors. Yeah, I'm not even making that up. It's called the Cave of Horror. Sorry, correction, horror. One singular horror, not horrors. Back in the 60s, the remains of 40 people were found from a long time before, so it makes sense that they didn't rush back to the cave to search for anything else. Now, cut to March 2021, fragments of a Dead Sea Scroll were found in that same cave, the Cave o' Horror. The writing on the scroll are mostly Greek letters with some in Hebrew. Dead Sea Scrolls in a Cave of Horror. Yeah, sounds like I'm making this up. I wish I was, I'm not. And finally, number 1, ancient Greek shipwreck. The oldest shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea, and you would never guess by looking at it. Looks brand new, looks like it just left 4 days ago. This ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel. It's not very large, but somehow this thing is mighty. It has been in great condition for over 2,400 years, over a mile below the surface. Yeah, no light, nothing. Even the fish are like, what is that? The lack of oxygen actually preserved the ship. That's why it looks like it sank a year ago and not, thousands. John Adams, principal investigator with the Black Sea Archaeology Project, describes the finding as something he never thought was even possible, let alone something he'd witnessed in his lifetime. That's why we had to finish in our number 1 spot. Only made sense.
Number 10, gold tongues. 140 miles south of Cairo is El Banasa. Archaeologists just found 2 sealed tombs containing the remains of a mystery man and a mystery woman, and an array of clues and, of course, treasures. The sealed tomb and sarcophagi made of limestone included scarab amulets, 4 canopic mummy jars, and more than 400 pieces of pottery and funerary figurines. Yeah, like little guys. The mummy's face was also so well preserved with a perfectly shiny golden tongue still inside his mouth. Ooh, ouch. They just like dip that in, or they cut that off and kind of replace it. How's that work? Guy's gonna have a hard time with his L's. The team stumbled upon 3 golden tongues actually, and archaeologists working in the Alexandria also discovered gold tongue mummies dating to about 2,000 years ago. Talk about an expensive sentence, huh? Number 9, ginger. As always, if you like what we do here on Bumblebee, throw us a like button, why don't you? Or comment down below. Which one of these creep you out the most? The golden tongues? Dude, it's already got me. The Gibellian pre-dynastic mummies are 6 naturally mummified bodies dating to approximately 3400 BCE, or from the late pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt. Since 1901, the first body excavated has remained on display in the British Museum. The body, of course, was originally nicknamed Ginger due to its very well-preserved, healthy, shiny red hair. This nickname is no longer officially used, of course, because these are people we're talking about here. After the Human Tissue Act of 2004, the British Museum developed policies for proper treatment of human remains and no longer used nicknames. Yeah, that would have been nice, wouldn't it? Just finding bones making jokes. Yes, look, Limbs McGee. I'll write that down. And here is the official. These 6 were excavated at the end of the 19th century by Wallace Budge and are the first complete, fully intact pre-dynastic bodies ever discovered to this day. Spooky. Number 8. King Tut. We can't just blow by this list without the scariest event of all. The tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922 in the Valley of the Kings, led by Egyptologist Howard Carter. Tut's tomb was hidden by debris, luckily, therefore it never got looted throughout the centuries. More than 5,000 objects were found, including the infamous King Tut himself. Egypt, now a part of the British rule, gave a feeling of national pride back then, strengthening pharaohism and gluing Egypt's ties to this now ancient world. The publicity surrounding the excavation excavation intensified when one of the founders actually died of an infection, giving rise to the infamous cursed tomb. But then a couple of other discoverers just started dropping dead and everyone was like, oh yeah, so that's what cursed means, huh? It says do not open right here, I see that now, gotcha. Number 7, John Wilkes Booth. Okay, so mummies are usually tied with Egyptian ritual and historical burial purposes, but it wasn't just them though. It's pretty common to preserve a body. John Wilkes Booth was famous for a couple of things. First off, he was one of the world's greatest actors, a true thespian, and of course, a prolific American presidential assassin. Yeah, he shot Lincoln, so. Apparently, he escaped the manhunt, which then apparently toured the US as a mummified version of himself. Wait, what? In 1903, a drifter named David E. George locked himself in a hotel, taking his own life by ingesting a lethal amount of arsenic. According to the news report, George made a confession. I am not David E. George, I am the one who killed the best man that ever lived. I am John Wilkes Booth. The embalmed body was soon fought over, and beginning in 1937 and continuing all the way into the 1950s, the mummy was part of Jay Gould's $1 Million Circus. Yeah, traveling with elephants, acrobats, and high dive dog acts all around the world. According to a PBS report, the mummy itself was actually last seen in the 1970s and maybe in the hands of a private collector. Dude, people are sick. They'll buy and sell literally anything for money and clout. Like, I don't get it, dude. Just like buy and sell Pokemon cards or something, you know? Number 6, Nicostratus. A large unknown Greco-Roman tomb was just found this year and excavated in Aswan in South Egypt. An Egyptian-Italian mission led by Patrizia Piacentini, professor of Egyptology and archaeology at the University of Milan. What makes this discovery so cool is the mummies that were discovered. This massive Romanized tomb located in the Aga Khan Mausoleum found archaeological treasures including offering tables, stone panels littered in hieroglyphics, and one large beautiful copper necklace engraved in Greek scripture with the name Nicostratus on it. The room is overlooked by 4 burial chambers dug deep into the rock where a beautiful terracotta sarcophagus lay. The architecture alone is puzzling, let alone these mysterious high-order young adults that were mummified here. Early studies have indicated so far that the grave includes bodies from more than one family, so the mystery question: who was this Nicostratus? Who was he? And who are these unrelated followers that followed him? Number 5, tattoos. Okay, so who was the first? We see them everywhere. I don't have any myself, but every which way you look, somebody's tatted head to toe. So who was the first one? Well, a mummy known as the Gobelin Man A pushes evidence back about 1,000 years. The oldest tattoos were once thought to belong to a South American Chinchorro mummy who had a mustache tattooed onto his face. It was initially thought that he was the oldest specimen of ink. Then, an ancient princess was found in Siberia. She holds one of the most well-preserved tattoos ever found on a body. Princess Ukok, a Scythian ruler who sadly died of breast cancer around 3,000 years ago. Her body was inked up so heavily and she was buried next to 6 horses, indicating that she was of high royalty. But in 1991, the oldest mummy ever found still holds the Guinness World Record for the oldest tats. Like, 5,000 years old. Otzi the Iceman reps 61 tattoos over his entire body, mostly lines that researchers think was either medicinal or therapeutic. Several needles were tied together and the skin was pricked stick and poke style with ink made from wood smoke and milk. Mix them together, rub them all over the wounds, and voila, Travis Barker. Number 4, the Lady of Cow. Speaking of being tatted head to toe for reasons we're still unsure of, the Lady of Cow. She was discovered in 2006 by a team of Peruvian archaeologists in the El Brujo Archaeological Complex in northern Peru, led by Regulo Franco Jordan, one of the National Cultural Institute of Peru. The mummy, which is heavily tattooed head to toe and wrapped in many layers of cloth, was found with a ton of ceremonial items, pottery, weapons, and jewelry. The remains of a second young woman were found as well, and researchers think it could have been a sacrifice, signifying this woman was a ruler of many. Modern autopsy reveals that they were in their mid-20s and died of complications due to pregnancy. They think she died somewhere around 450 BCE, and until they found her, researchers were almost certain that only men held high standing in their culture and power, and that women of this status should never have existed. Well, rewrite them, boys, because Beyonce said it. Who run the world? Girls. Boom. Right there. Evidence, sacrifice, tattoos. Come on. Number 3, killer crocs. In 1899, archaeologists funded by the University of California benefactor Phoebe A. Hearst found hundreds of crocodile mummies on an expedition to northern Egypt. 19 mummified crocodiles are part of the Egyptian collection at the Phoebe A. Hearst Museum of Anthropology at UC Berkeley. These things were a constant threat to ancient Egyptians, and there were a lot of them. Some tomb walls are even decorated head to toe with scenes that show herdsmen performing magical spells to ward off crocodiles before they crossed the Nile on wooden boats. It was such a big problem every August when the Nile would flood that there were croc priests who would spend all day mummifying and offering them to the gods. Apparently, the Dutch National Museum of Antiques unwrapped and scanned a 3,000-year-old croc mummy, which were actually 50 little crocodiles positioned in a way to make it look like a giant croc. Like a croc within a croc. And not just them too. The cat-faced goddess Bastet would receive mummified cats, while baboons were offered to Thoth, the god of wisdom. Animal mummification was so popular that it became a thriving industry. In one catacomb complex, Egyptologists think there could be as many as 70 million mummified animals crammed into like 30 small rooms. Different times, man, different times. Number 2. Chinchorro mummies. On the sandy dunes of the Atacama Desert, the Chilean port city of Arica, bordering Peru, was home to the Chinchorro people. In July, the United Nations Cultural Organization, UNESCO, added hundreds of well-preserved mummies to its World Heritage List. The Chinchorro mummies. First documented in 1917 by German archaeologist Max Uhl, who had found some of the preserved bodies actually on a beach. Radiocarbon dating eventually showed that the mummies were more than 7,000 years old, more than 2 millennia older than the more widely known Egyptian mummies. The earliest one, the Achaemenid, dates to 7020 BCE. They discovered their process of 3 stages. The black technique was to take the deceased person's body apart, limb by limb, treating it and then reassembling it all in like a Mr. Potato Head style. Then, the red technique, which made incisions above the shoulders to remove all internal organs and dry the body out. And finally, the mud coat. Basically, caking the body in a mixture of clay and gypsum in a last coat seal. Then they'd wrap you up. And using sticks to mold and hold a cast of a person's shape, this process was, well, this. Researchers think that Egyptians were like, oh, that's how you do it. I see what the, okay, perfect. I'm just gonna go over there and do that. And number 1, Saqqara mummies. In 2019, just 20 miles south of Cairo on the Nile's west bank, there lays a field mixed of sand and earth that make up the ancient site of Saqqara. It's the oldest building known to humans. Like old. Older than the 3 pyramids. And with that comes a new archaeological discovery. This year, archaeologists just discovered the largest loot of ancient Egypt ever. Better than Tut's tomb. 150 bronze statues, 250 coffins with mummies in them that date back 3,000 years. Saqqara is Egypt's richest archaeological site. Home to the 4,700-year-old Step Pyramid, Egypt's oldest, the site was used as a burial ground. Geophysical surveys have revealed the remains of numerous temples buried under the sand, in which we have discovered only a quarter of the actual site. Millions of animal mummies like dogs, cats, cobras, and crocs, even 2 lion cubs were found mummified. The work site is 500 yards long, and the archaeologists working there have only carried out the first 100 yards of digging. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I can't wait to see like what next year holds. Like, get some more bulldozers going, you know? Saqqara, Göbekli Tepe, Peru? More scans, more scans! So interesting, but also very terrifying.
Number 10, T-Rex arms. Alright, mystery solved, folks. Have you ever wondered why a T-Rex, one of the biggest, baddest dinosaurs in the game, have you ever wondered why their arms are so tiny? What went wrong here? How did they get the short end of the DNA dino stick? Well, scientists may have an answer. They've spent decade after decade debating T-Rex arms, which first of all, it's a great job. And now, at first, previous hypotheses suggested that their arms may have been used as pectoral claspers during mating, or to get off the ground after falling over. Both hilarious in this sense. But even so, there's other parts of the body that would have been used in that scenario. So it's almost like they're still useless. New studies this year suggest that these arms getting smaller was actually perfect. The arms of the T-Rex shriveled because there is an evolutionary advantage to keeping them out of the way. T-Rex, yeah, they would eat in groups, so more often than not, these idiots would bite their friends' arms off, or their own. Yeah, so they shriveled them up, kept them out of the way, Bob's your uncle. You ever bite your own finger while you're eating food? That's a personal, embarrassing moment. Number 9, Garfield phones. Okay, hello, look who's calling. The Garfield crave began back in 1978. Jim Davis brought to life this lasagna-loving, Monday-hating cat, the OG grumpy cat, really. And as his popularity grew, of course, so did his merch. A Garfield couch with eyes, that's really anybody wants, right, in life? But the last thing you would expect to find floating in the ocean are probably Garfield phones. Also, yes, I said phones, not one phone. Thousands of Garfield phones have been slowly washing up ashore in France for 30 years now. Imagine standing there looking at the ocean, thinking about your ex, pondering life, and then a Garfield phone washes up. You're like, ugh, fine, I'll call her. This began in the 80s, but until recently, we didn't know where they were coming from, which is pretty jarring. A farmer read about these phones in an article and how they could, be hurting the environment, and he came forward and admitted he knew about the shipping container full of Garfield phones. Rene Morvin, this guy's been sitting on a national treasure, this huge secret. He says in the 80s he found the shipping container in a sea cave, which, imagine thinking you found some sort of lost billions worth of treasures, but it's just this. If the ocean gives you plastic phones, you answer it. Number 8, holes. If you have trypophobia, you may want to skip this one, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty odd. Off the coast of Big Sur, California, a survey revealed about 15,000 holes, all underwater, just on the ocean floor. For some reason, they're all the same size and they all measure up to be around 11 meters wide and 1 meter deep. Now the team at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, they found 15,000 of these, and they found 5,000 more that are even larger. They're called micro depressions, and the big ones are called pockmarks. Initially, scientists thought that methane under the seafloor, it was just coming out to say hello, maybe that's the reason for these indents. And then they, of course, left a crater. Rovers went down there, tests were done, turns out that's not the case. No methane is involved. In fact, there hasn't been any methane down there for 50,000 years. These MDs are essentially garbage trails, and now there's deep sea creatures living in them. It's like a little underwater neighborhood. It's cute. They even found a whale skull just laying in one of them. Can you imagine that? Imagine being a crab and coming home to that. I'd move. I'd move to the next micro depression immediately. Number 7, Amelia Earhart remains. The first woman to fly across the Atlantic was well on her way to setting even more groundbreaking records, but her plane tragically disappeared over the Pacific in 1937. And it's since been a great mystery where the final resting place of Amelia Earhart now is. But we may have actually found her remains back in 1940 without really knowing. They were found on the Pacific island of Nikumaroro. Now, the initial examination of these remains were reported to be that of a man. That was the general idea in 1941. Come 2018, however, now we have a different idea. Could it be? Researcher Richard Johns took another look at the long-lost remains, and since those days, we've learned more about Amelia Earhart. Photos have since surfaced online, so we compared the bone measurements to her body type, and they're pretty sure that they found our missing aviator. Number 6, abandoned whiskey. This one's pretty fun, dare I say, a little exciting? I don't know. An explorer found crates in a hut belonging to another explorer, that of Ernest Shackleton. You've probably heard of him before, it's pretty huge. Anything belonging to our boy Ernest Shackleton is a treasure, especially when it's frozen bottles of scotch. That's pretty lovely. It's probably the best case scenario, really, evidently. It's 2010, and you find 100-year-old frozen scotch that Ernest Shackleton once drank. What do? Do you drink it? Do you save it? A little bit of both. I would do a bit of both. This may be the best discovery on this list, or at least the happiest. It's been locked up, of course, since, such a historical find, but you'll be happy to know that a sample was given to Scottish distiller White & Mackay. They're now studying this recipe to try and bring it back to life, which is amazing. Number 5, surprise Nikes. I threw shoes on my holiday wish list this year, and every year for that matter. Nothing like a nice fresh pair of sneaks. Sometimes you find the perfect shoes, and sometimes they find you. In the mid-90s, a shipment of Nike shoes heading to the US was lost during this crazy storm. Around 5 shipping containers fell into the sea, so later on, 61,000 pairs of shoes just started to drift towards the west coast. Just making their little way, just slowly but surely. That's terrifying. People saw shoes in the water. Do you know how afraid I would be if a shoe brushed against my shoulder while I was swimming? My brain would go to the darkest places. So scary. These shoes luckily didn't belong to anybody, but they did all have the same serial number by chance. So what started as this ocean mystery ended up working out for the better. Nike lost a lot of money, and we tracked the shoe's journey. So now we oddly learned more about our ocean currents. Well, Nike lost money. Win-win. Number 4, 2021 rocket. Remember last year in May when a large piece of space junk was just gonna crash land somewhere on Earth and we had no idea where it was gonna hit? Possible Avengers level threat. We're all just looking at Twitter, refreshing, like, where's it gonna be? Where did it land? Well, at the time, this was one of the biggest pieces of human-made space junk to ever crash towards Earth, so it was a little jarring. They said it would land in New York or New Zealand. One of the two. Okay, gamble. Let's do it. 50-50. The debris came from the lost March 5B rocket and landed in the Indian Ocean, luckily, with most of it burning up upon re-entry. Now, usually when rockets discard pieces, it's done so strategically, falling into the ocean, normally the Atlantic, in a graveyard. This was not supposed to happen. Thankfully, it didn't land in New York. That, again, would have been terrifying. It would look like Loki's arrived. What's that? Is that a meteor? Are we done? Number 3. Raining spiders. Back in 2015, and you guessed it, Australia, residents of Goulburn woke up to the town just being caked in spiders. This is my nightmare. This is my absolute biggest fear. Everything was webbed. They were tiny black spiderlings all over the place. Resident Ian Watson told reporters that, quote, "When I looked up at the sun, it was like this tunnel of webs going up for a couple of 100 meters into the sky." End quote. Also, delete memory. Thanks. Rick Vedder, an entomologist at the University of California at Riverside, says that many spiders are just ballooning around us, but thankfully, they all don't do it at the same time. Like this situation. Yeah, this is happening all the time, so keep your heads up. Or down. I'd rather not look. Number 2. Giant pipes. Back in 2017, these massive industrial pipes washed up along the shores of the northern Norfolk coast. Now, if I was swimming and I saw this thing floating towards me, I would faint. I would think it's a giant sea snake or something. I would have no idea what I was looking at. These things were massive. Terrible discovery, but again, pretty exciting. I didn't realize how big these were at first, and then I zoomed in. I think I have some mechanophobia now. Where did they come from? Well, these pipes were lost at sea following an accident on an Iceland shipping container, which resulted in 500-meter-long pipes coming loose. Yeah, that's so scary. Luckily, you can see these things coming, but that's still jarring. I would think it's a submarine emerging out of the water. God. The company that produced them, Pipe Life, great name, rather fitting. They urge the curious to stay far away. Do not approach them. You can see them coming because they're the size of buildings, so they can obviously easily crush a human being. These ocean pipes have a diameter of 2 meters, and the longest one that washed up on the beach was 500 meters long. Number 1. 3 kittens. Back in 2020, an oil worker named Drayton Dewich found 3 kittens all frozen to the ground near Drayton Valley. They were alive, but just, very cold. It was mid-January, everything is frozen. This was near an oil well that he'd been working on, right? Those are always freezing cold. On Facebook, they posted about how the 3 kittens were all males, dewormed and living under the same roof now, and they were much warmer. He just found 3 little pets and brought them home. He got them out of the ice by using coffee to melt the ice. That's amazing. I said it once before and I'll say it again. Coffee saves lives. He's like, oh yeah, look at that. They're alive. Number 10, Roman sea curses. Okay, the 1st century, a great place to begin with most things that are horrible and new to humans. Romans did things a little differently. We can't figure out yet how they engineered aqueducts or how that many people watched Colosseum battles. Yeah, I can't watch an armbar during UFC, let alone bring my family to the Colosseum. Be like, that's a lion. That's a guy getting eaten by the lion. Yeah, it's him. Ancient Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, he wrote a book on natural history, and in said book, this go-to, might I add, on ancient history, the Elder wrote about half-human, half-fish creatures that he called nereids. That sounds like mermaids, Avatar, I don't even know, Atlanteans. He even added to his first observation detailing that the human parts of said body were covered in rough scales. Human in appearance, but still fishy nonetheless. Awesome. Guess we have those to look forward to. The Elder also recalls a seaman who would climb ships at night and then sink them. Kind of like Aquaman, only he wouldn't help people. He would actually put them in life-threatening situations. But still cool. He probably looked like a climbing that ship, Number 9, sirens, aka mermaids. Here we go. Figured I'd talk about these ones as well. The mythology surrounding sirens, it's interesting, but I don't know how I feel about it yet. We have to talk about it in the comments. I don't think we have Atlanteans flirting with sailors per se, but I do believe there's some sort of creature that's hybrid human fish. You know what I mean? On his first trip overseas in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not 1, but 3 sirens. Yeah, he even wrote about it. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. Okay, he's rhyming, that's always fun. Thank you, Columbus. For their faces had some masculine traits. That's what he added afterwards. I would think I'd be a very cute mermaid. Honestly, thank you so much. I could probably trick Christopher Columbus and be like, hey, come to this island. Just wave in and do my little fish thing, whatever. So what did Christopher Columbus see? I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places and or people, obviously Chris can get confused. He's not really our go-to guy, I don't think anymore. So historians believe Columbus may have seen a few manatees and not mermaids. Either way, I'm like, you know what? Both are kind of terrifying to see out of nowhere. Number 8, the Kraken. For ages now, sailors from Norway and Greenland have shared tales of this giant sea monster, and you've probably heard about it as well. Or if you've seen the hit franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean, you've probably seen it in IMAX. Tentacles big enough to pluck you out of your boat. This thing is terrifying, right? We all know about the Kraken. In 1857, Danish naturalist Jepeda Steenstrup found a large squid beak, and soon after was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas, okay? So something was out there. He concludes that the Kraken is real and that this was proof, and that these parts were maybe part of a species of giant squid called Architeuthis dux, which translates to ruling squid in Latin. Very little is known about giant ruling squid, of course because they're so hard to track, but we did get a photo of one in 2005 and a video of another in 2013. Number 7, Yellow Brick Road. Deep sea divers may have found the road to Atlantis, or Oz, one of the two. Back in May 2022, this bizarre path was spotted in the Pacific after an exploration vessel, Nautilus, caught the rocky formation near Hawaii. Just a nice place of unknown everything in that ocean. Awesome, we love exploring. The exploration team said in a recent interview with WION News that our corps of exploration have witnessed incredibly unique and fascinating geological formations while diving on the Liliuokalani Ridge. The 90-degree fractures are most likely the results from, a big eruption from a volcano a long time ago. The Marine National Monument, or PNMM for short, is the largest fully protected conservation area in the world. So let's not litter anymore, maybe, I don't know. It covers more than 580,000 square miles in the ocean. So far we've only discovered 3% of its seafloor, so I'm sure there's many more discoveries of roads apparently leading to Atlantis. Let's hope. Number 6, the Great Lakes Griffin. Back in 2018 in Lake Michigan, diver Steve Liebert found what he believed was the holy grail of Great Lakes shipwrecks. Now this is exciting to some, I can't even look at photos, I have thalassophobia. The Griffin sank back in 1679. Divers have been searching for this beauty for a very long time. As a kid, Steve himself, Steve Liebert, was talking about the shipwreck when his history teacher stopped and said, hey, who knows, maybe one of you will find the Griffin. Imagine that, your grade 8 teacher tells you somebody will find a ship one day and that somebody was actually you. Yeah, at 76 years old, Steve discovered the wreck. It was 2018, but his research began 40 years ago. Liebert began diving back in 1981 after an amazing teacher got him motivated. It took a long time to track down, of course, but I think it was worth it, we can all agree. If you're in any Great Lakes, keep your eyes open for, 50-foot long ships from the 1600s. They're always lurking below. That's why I can't swim. Like, I put goggles on, look down, and see the top of a ship. I would throw up. I would literally, that's it. Maybe because I'm like afraid of heights, and for some reason when I'm in like the ocean or like a lake, I feel like I'm up high. Maybe that's what it is. Number 5, toxic waste. Okay, we mentioned a yellow brick road. It's always fun. It's a fun time, a creepy looking discovery, but certainly not harmful like this next one here. Yeah, for the back 9, we're gonna crank it up a bit. Sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was discovered off the coast of LA. It's 3,000 feet deep, and these ROVs, these deep ROVs, found around 27,000 barrels of waste. Looks like the climax of a Breaking Bad finale. It's just, what is going on down here? What happened? Who put these here? The 2021 discovery was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's one of many words I can say on YouTube, for sure. You can literally see in these photos like this aura of toxic waste, like just a plume of evil coming from these barrels. That's brutal. Recycle, please. Number 4, the frilled shark. Also alarming, just in its own natural, terrifying way. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered a dinosaur. Yeah, they discovered the frilled shark. It was lurking around 870 meters below the surface. Now this one looks like an eel, almost. It's so scary, I don't know. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long, and they fight like Daredevil. They can hunt in complete darkness. They don't have to look, they just use their senses, and they don't use sunlight. I almost got lost there while I was doing that bit, but if I was a frilled shark, I'd be dead on still, I'd be fine. They don't need to see anything, so remember that next time you're skinny dipping. Unless you can hold your breath for a long time, you won't actually run into the frilled shark, so don't worry about that. They're only found a mile below the surface, and again, they're rare as hell. Have you ever dealt one of these? Are you a diver? Have you seen a shark? Comment down below some of your diving nightmares, just so I can read them and then go, oh, I'm never going in the ocean ever again. That's what I like doing. I like going, ooh, I'm never doing that ever again. That's what Reddit's for. Number 3. The deepest shipwreck. The USS Johnston was a US Navy destroyer which sank during the Battle of Samar back in 1944. It was after a battle with a large fleet of Japanese warships and went down. Now Victor Vescovo, who is one of the few people who has made the dive into the Marianas Trench, that's why his name sounds familiar, he was one of the people who first stumbled upon the remains of this sunken warship. The ship's remains were first found in 2019 and was known as the deepest known shipwreck, as it was found 6,456 meters deep in the Philippine Sea in the Pacific Ocean. I lost track of what I was saying. It's so deep, I can't even imagine. That's like a mountain, you know what I'm saying? We have a new record holder, believe it or not. Yeah, the world's deepest shipwreck was discovered 4 miles underwater in the Philippines. Yeah, this is now the world's deepest shipwreck that was ever discovered. This is terrifying. I want to move on right now. I'm gonna throw it. Number 2, loud ocean heat. This is just naturally and so scary. Here we go. How depressing is this one? Okay, back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like nightclub subwoofers almost, into the waters at Heard Island. Also, like Heard Island speakers, is this a bit? I wish I was making this up. They made the pun for me. They did my job. I'm upset. These speakers emitted low frequency sounds all across our oceans. Now these signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contain information on the temperature of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left from global warming. Doesn't help when we lower 27,000 barrels of into it. So let's just maybe stop that for a bit. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low frequency sounds may be affecting our ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? And finally, number 1, the Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail. This is a tragedy. This claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is this? Now, the Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10, 1628. It was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what the hell happened? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, started making a little topsy-turvy, and the second gush of wind sank it. Just like that. There was no war, there was nothing going on. Just a bottle of clink and then it went down. So fast. It's like the scene in Shrek where it sinks fast comedically, but this was real life, so it wasn't comedic at all. It was actually rather terrifying. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the warship, they were deemed too heavy, evidently. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. That's how we know how she went down. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was discovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact. It's deep, dark, and cold. Yeah, nothing affects it. Humans focusing too much on naval warfare rather on if the ship can actually stay afloat. That's definitely a human problem. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans, but yeah, stop installing 64 bronze cannons.
Number 10, the Capuchin Crypt, Rome, Italy. A city with so much history, you can almost taste it in the pasta sauce. Or at least so I'm told. I've never been. I'd love to though. Oh, it'd be great. The Colosseum, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. There's lots to see and from all different eras of history. It's pretty cool. Imagine what still hasn't been found or what's buried underneath Rome. God, I can only imagine what history's there. Only time will tell. Well, today I'm talking about the Capuchin Crypt, which, for you sports fans out there, is a church that's chock full of bones and skulls of real-life human beings. Nice! Today it makes for an interesting tourist attraction, but for me, there's something slightly off-putting about looking at skulls and bones and then going for a light lunch. Let's go for a light lunch after this. Yeah, let's go. Number 9, Russia, World War II. World War II was and still is the greatest human event in history. Stories of horror, loss, brutality, but also tales of heroism, bravery, and camaraderie. The efforts taken on by every nation, every state, every man, and every woman should not go unnoticed. Teamwork was crucial on every level. The United States of America did her part. No one can deny that. However, no one can also deny the toll that the Soviet Union paid as our allies. The Eastern Front saw some of the worst battles of the war and some of the worst of humanity. Sometimes we can be awful. However, when things started to go in the Allies' favor, it was becoming clear that while the Allies were liberating German-occupied nations, the Soviets well, they were really just replacing them, and in some cases even worse. The dark discovery here is that some leaders of the Soviet Union had ulterior motives in mind besides freedom and were simultaneously working against the Allies as well as with them. It's kind of a bad situation. Number 8, bone tools. Human beings, the Homo sapien, bipedal ape-like creatures that require antiperspirant after a few hours of brisk walking. I know I do. Towel too. We've been around for thousands of years. While the study of ancient Rome and Greece is very exciting, and I'm always interested to find out more, the study of cavemen and early humans is also very exciting. We're weird creatures. Like when we find tools used by our ancestors, stone tools that are made with a surprising amount of precision. Seriously, I don't know if I could do that. However, we also find bone tools, which, it makes sense. We hunted a lot of animals back then, so it was important to use, all the parts of the animal. It makes perfect sense. However, some tools that have been found were not animal bones, but human bones. Yes, that's right. We were using tools made out of each other. That's not horrifying, I don't know what is. Number 7, the Black Sarcophagus. In July of 2018 in the ancient and wonderful city of Alexandria, a black sarcophagus was uncovered. Now, when I say black, I mean spooky Halloween scary black, which just begging not to be opened. It screams, don't open me. So, you can guess what we did next. We opened it, even though there have been warnings that it was cursed. What was inside was even more surprising. Once the 30-ton granite coffin was opened, there was 3 bodies inside marinating in a red-brown liquid. Ooh, gross. There was so much speculation about the coffin that a petition was started because some people wanted to drink the mystery liquid. Why? Don't, guys? No. Besides the necropolytic juice found inside, there was 2 men and a woman, which asked a lot of questions actually. It's kind of weird. At first I thought it was to be soldiers, but now we're not too sure. Number 6, body snatch. Imagine it's Victorian times, you just lost your spouse. Oh, tragedy. Sorry to hear that. Thoughts and prayers, brother. You've scrounged up the dollars to make a proper burial. Every so often you visit your loved one in their honor. It just makes sense, it's what you do. But, however, one week you come back and see the grave has been disturbed. Uh-oh. You look in and see there's no body. You're heartbroken. That's awful. Who would do such a thing? Weeks later, you find yourself at a doctor's office where the doctor tells you he's learned so much since his cousin dug up a cadaver in the same plot as the land as your loved one. Ooh, yes, that's right, folks. Body snatching. Stuff like this actually happened. Respectfully, of course, in Victorian London, where people made a good living to dig up corpses and deliver them to doctors for medical research. Medical research. Number 5, E.T. One day in 1983, the video game market crashed. Horrible. That would be awful for me. The home console market was oversaturated with companies trying to cut themselves a slice of the home console pie. Too many consoles, too many games, and a lot of which were just straight trash. Just garbage, dude. It's dog water, dude. There was no rating system or guidelines, so when you spent the price on a game, well, you really felt it. You just had to pray it was really good. The final straw was Atari, the great gaming company they are, making a movie tie-in game for the hit E.T. That's right, remember that movie? It's kind of weird. Verdict, it was also trash and stood atop the mountain of filth that was the console market at the time, which caused an avalanche and eventually the crash of the video game market. Atari, feeling very silly after printing millions more cartridges than consoles, was left with a very large issue and was going to need an extraterrestrial solution. The rumor for years was that they loaded up dump trucks worth of games that would never sell, mainly ET cards, and dumped them out into the New Mexico desert. It was thought to all be an urban myth. Spooky story to tell by the fire, why don't you? Well, in 2014, the carts were found. 700,000 copies worth. With inflation, this is millions of dollars, but at the same time, useless. Number 4, constellations. Space is amazing, and even though we are a minuscule part of that compared to the rest of the expansive universe, it is interesting to be a part of a large cosmic story. I think it is. We've been studying the skies for a long time, and we've come to understand that stars, well, they're really far away. It gets dark when you think that given enough time, the constellations we know now, because the universe is expanding, won't be here, which is so weird to think about. Or rather, what stars used to be, or used to light up the sky before the sky we know today. Given the science of optics, light, and physics, some stars we see right now may have already gone out, or fizzled out if you will, or deceased. Just seeing the light before it disappears finally from our eyes. That is so weird. That's crazy. You can see it then one day, just gone. But it's been gone for a lot longer than you'd think. Oh, That's so crazy to think about. Number 3, vampire burials. If there's one thing I've learned during my time as an internet comedian, it's that history is messed up and people are crazy, especially from the past. Whoa! When it comes to burials, for the most part, humans have had respect for the deceased. Maybe except for some greedy people in Victorian London like I previously mentioned. However, all over Europe there have been discoveries of bodies found in peculiar situations. Some of these bodies were found with boulders on top of them, decapitated stones, or wood stakes prying their mouths open. That's so weird. Why such brutality even after they've passed, as most of these things were discovered to be done post-mortem? That's really strange. Well, that's because these folks have been thought to be vampires. Yes, vampires. The very same with pointy teeth and blood-drinking tendencies. It's amazing how far superstition can go. That's really weird. Number 2, black holes. Speaking of black holes, no, I'm just kidding. A black hole is a region of space-time where gravity is so strong that nothing, no particles or even electromagnetic radiation such as light, can escape from it. That's about as sciencey as I'm ever going to get on this channel, but the point is there really isn't anything darker than a black hole. Literally, like that's it, full stop. Naturally, as humans, the first thing we want to do is jump inside and see what happens. However, while no one is exactly sure, there's a good chance your molecular structure will be decombobulated and not put back together again. Ooh. Number 1, I think this is one of the darkest stories in history, I gotta be honest. The Radium Girls. In a nutshell, the Radium Girls were women working factories making glow-in-the-dark watches for the military. The catch? Well, the paint these ladies were using for the watches was radium based. Radium is radioactive and toxic. Small exposure here or there, sure, okay, no problem, you're fine. However, these women were told to keep the fine tip of their brushes by crimping it with their lips. Day after day, direct contact and ingestion of radium was not a nice discovery. Multiple ladies got sick, passed away, and in one case, which is the most heinous thing ever, one woman, her jaw fell off from radiation sickness. That's awful. Jesus. Oh, that's bad.
At number 10, First Americans. 2021 brought us a lot of new discoveries. The study of ancient humans gained more information with the discoveries made last year. One of the bizarre finds from last year include footprints that are believed to have belonged to some of the first people to set foot in America. These footprints were discovered in muddy earth at the edge of a wetland in New Mexico and were very well preserved. After some research was done, it was found that these footprints were made somewhere between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, which greatly pushes back the timeline of when humans came to the Americas, the last continent to be settled by humans. Up until this point, it was believed that the first humans arrived in the Americas around 13,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. These footprints, which are believed to have been made by children, have scientists thinking that these humans migrated to the area during a time where sheets of ice blocked the passage to North America, indicating that they were there much earlier than previously thought. At number 9, Dragon Man. Now, even though the name might not suggest it, no, this is not a half man, half dragon, but it's still a strange discovery. This past summer, scientists discovered the skull of this new human species that they've named Homo longi, longi being the Chinese name for dragon, and dragon being a reference to the location that these remains were found, since they were discovered by the Dragon River region in northeast China. The skull of the Dragon Man dates back 146,000 years, and scientists believe that this new species belongs to another sister group of the Homo sapiens, so they're even more closely related to us than Neanderthals. What stunned researchers the most about this incredible find was the size of this being's skull, because it was pretty big for a hominid from this time. This find opened a new avenue of discoveries for scientists, so that's exciting news for anyone who takes an interest in this sort of thing. I mean, with further research, who knows what we could learn from this find. Before we carry on talking about some more of these strange discoveries, why not take a moment to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel to see more videos like this one. At number 8, ancient fashion. In 2021, archaeologists made a discovery that gives us an idea of how ancient humans made clothing. It was always assumed that ancient humans used animal furs for clothing, but up until recently, not much was known about their fashion. With this newest find, scientists were able to figure out how clothing was made all those thousands of years ago. 62 bone tools were found in Morocco, and it's believed that they were used to process and smooth animal skins. This find may be the earliest evidence for clothing in the archaeological records. The bone tools that were found are believed to be between 90,000 and 120,000 years old and were used to work leather. What's fascinating about this find is the fact that similar bone tools are still used by leather workers even to this day, so it's cool to know that our ways haven't changed much over the years. At number 7, Göbekli Tepe. The Neolithic era was the final period of the Stone Age where early humans began the process of domestication of animals and agriculture. For a long time, scientists believed that this era gave way to the process of holding rituals and creating monuments to their beliefs. But with the remarkable discovery of Göbekli Tepe, that entire idea was rewritten, as this mysterious site suggested that early hunter-gatherers made this temple as a ritualistic center far before these individuals decided to create settlements and begin the agricultural revolution. Based on evidence found at this site that dates 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, groups of hunter-gatherers came to this site in Urfa, Turkey some 11,500 years ago, and carved out this ritualistic site out of the limestone that covered the area. It is believed that Göbekli Tepe was just a stopping point for these early humans. It was a place to meet, hold feasts, and then leave again. Soon enough though, the desire to regularly hold these gatherings prompted the early humans to domesticate plants and animals to have a more dependable food source. So with this in mind, it is believed that these rituals are what gave way to the agricultural revolution, not the other way around. If you've seen any content regarding Göbekli Tepe, then you would know how eerie and mysterious the site looks, and because it's so old, it holds so many secrets that we have yet to uncover. At number 6, cave paintings. I think that out of all the things left behind by our ancient ancestors, cave paintings are one of the most bizarre. So many archaic art pieces have been found by scientists over the years, from statues to ceremonial pieces, but cave paintings are by far the most fascinating, at least in my opinion. Much like modern art, it is all up to interpretation, especially since the artists who created these cave masterpieces are long gone. Some of the most mysterious cave paintings are those that depict some kind of alien life forms. Yep, I said aliens. Even back in the days of the early humans, Homo sapiens have been looking to the stars, or even having their own encounters with extraterrestrials. One such depiction of alien life comes from the Wandjina cave paintings. These eerie looking paintings depict these sky beings, as they were called. These beings are depicted with white faces devoid of a mouth, large black eyes, and a head surrounded by a halo or some kind of helmet. According to legend, the Wandjina were sky people or spirits from the sky who descended from the Milky Way and created Earth and all of its inhabitants. The Wandjina realized how big a task their creation was, and so they sent for more of their people and spent their time creating, teaching, and being gods to the people of Earth. Eventually they left, either descending into the water or returning back into the stars. This extraterrestrial discovery has to be one of the most bizarre finds from our ancient ancestors. At number 5, mass extinction. This one might be a little sad because we're going to talk about how scientists determined just how much destructions humans caused in the early days of humanity. While humans were evolving in Africa, the rest of the world's creatures were thriving for the most part. In many parts of the world untouched by human influence, there were megafauna. These megafauna were able to live and thrive for thousands of years, at least until Homo sapiens came along and ruined everything. As we started to traverse the globe, creating settlements and beginning the story of humanity, we also, in the process, killed off most of this megafauna, causing a mass extinction of these creatures. This extinction event, which scientists have called the Holocene extinction, is still ongoing. Most of the largest animals to have ever roamed the earth were wiped out around 80,000 years ago and went completely extinct by 10,000 years ago. Some scientists want to blame this on climate change, however, in a lot of places, the timing of the first human settlements and the extinction of certain animals line up too precisely to completely excuse us from having caused damage to Earth's megafauna. At number 4, baby burial. Though it can be really sad, finding ancient burial sites can give researchers a lot of information about the culture of certain groups of ancient people. At a 34,000-year-old hunter-gatherer burial site near Moscow, archaeologists discovered the remains of 2 adolescent boys, and what they found alongside the remains was surprising. These 2 boys, who looked to have had some kind of disability, were buried like royalty. They were buried together, along with 10,000 mammoth beads, more than 20 armbands, around 300 pierced fox teeth, 16 ivory mammoth spears, carvings, antlers, and human fibula laid across the chest of each child. Compared to the other adult burial sites, this one was quite lavish, but the reason as to why these 2 were buried with so much care is unknown. It is one of those mysteries from our history that remains unsolved, making it a bit of a bizarre find. At number 3, old settlement. In an area of Kenya called Panga ya Saidi, archaeologists discovered a network of caves that are believed to have housed hundreds of people. This cave area houses more than 1,000 square feet of space, and it is believed that an ancient tribe used to call this place home. Inside this cave, archaeologists also discovered a collection of various stone tools that date back around 67,000 years. This was the ideal living arrangement for the ancient people who used to live there because the tropical climate of the area would have been good for survival, whereas other areas of Africa would have experienced drought. This discovery just helped further our understanding of how the early humans lived. At number 2, Homo floresiensis. Here's a really interesting species of human that has recently been discovered. Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, were ancient hominids who lived in Indonesia around 100,000 to 50,000 years ago, and as you could probably guess by its nickname, these ancient humans were very small. It is estimated that they only stood about 3'6" on average and weighed just over 60 pounds. Homo floresiensis also had tiny brains, large teeth, shrugged forward shoulders, had no chins, and had receding foreheads. So they definitely did not look like the rest of us humans. So far, the remains of these humans have only been found on the island of Flores, Indonesia, and because of that, scientists believe that this species of human was subjected to island dwarfism, an evolutionary process that occurs from long-term isolation on an island with limited food. This island also has pygmy elephants, who are also extinct. What's pretty cool though is that scientists are currently exploring new evidence that might suggest that Homo floresiensis might have already been small before arriving to the island. And finally, at number 1, ancient music. When you think about ancient humans, you might not associate them with art or music as they were quite primitive, but it turns out that some of our human ancestors were quite musically inclined. Years back, scientists discovered the first evidence of musical instruments in Germany and Slovakia. In 2008, archaeologists in Germany found flutes made from mammoth ivory that date back around 40,000 years ago, and just a few years before that, in 1995 in Slovakia, researchers found other flutes made from the thigh bones of cave bears, which dated back around 60,000 years. These Slovakian flutes were the oldest musical instruments ever found, and they were made by Neanderthals. This opened up a whole new world of discovery for scientists, as this find suggested that these ancient people were able to comprehend concepts like rhythm, tempo, and melody. This also suggested that Neanderthals were much more intelligent and sophisticated than we thought.
Number 10, the Anguished Man. I don't care who you are, but every family out there has one artifact or one heirloom in their house that just doesn't sit well with you. Please comment below and let us know. I'm actually very curious to see what it is. For me, it was a dancing Halloween skull with moss and black roses coming out of its eyes, playing the classic funeral song. I don't know what you call it, but you know what I'm talking about. Speaking of funerals, that's probably where the Anguished Man came from. I'm just taking a guess. The Anguished Man is a painting of a man in anguish, or some sort of distress, and I'm not just saying this to be funny, but the painting is 100% bona fide scary. What's more unusual than that is that no one is sure of its origin or creator. The current owner of the painting says he got it from his grandmother, and the knowledge train stops there. No one knows where it came from. And seriously, look at it, it's scary, it's terrifying, I don't like it. I'm gonna walk off now, it's scary.
Number 9, the Goddess of Death statue. Well, that's quite the name. Okay, let's talk about it, shall we? For starters, it doesn't look like anything menacing, which makes the tale that much more convincing, if anything. It looks like one of those Crazy Bones. Remember Crazy Bones from the late 90s? So good. I had all of them. Put them in my mouth all the time, weirdly. It's like the sucked on some Crazy Bones. This cursed ancient statue from 3500 BC was unearthed at Lempa, Cyprus back in 1878. The limestone was dated quite a while back, and the statue, as far as origins go, is a complete mystery. But many historians believe that it was once a fertility statue, or it represented a goddess whose name has now been lost in time. The statue has gone through numerous families, with tragedy following closely behind. Hence the, curse aspect of this list. Lord Elephant had the statue for around 6 years, and during that time, all 7 of his family members bit the bullet. Second owner, Ivor Minucci, same thing, entire family just wiped out, this time only within 4 years. Lord Thompson Noel, entire family, also 4 years, and then finally the statue had belonged to the late Sir Alan Biverbrook and his family. And you can probably guess what happened within a few years.
Number 8, Cursed Amethyst. A beautiful purple amethyst stolen from India. Worth a fortune and would make an excellent addition to any jewelry collection. Trouble is, there may be something wrong with this gorgeous gem. Cursed, that is. The first gentleman to appropriate this gem quickly became ill afterwards and passed away. The gem was then given to his son, who also became ill and croaked. The gem kept passing hands as the story goes on, until it came to the possession of a man named Edward Heron Allen, who was so convinced of the gem's dark powers, he stored it in a bank vault and put it in 7 lockboxes, just to make sure. It's kind of like the babushka doll from hell. He also left strict instructions to take out the gem 33 years exactly to the day that he put it in, and a warning for anyone who dares possess such an item. It now sits in the Museum of Natural History. I'll keep my distance, thank you very much.
Number 7. The Baker's Wedding Dress. Why is it in so many horror films the ghost is always a lady floating around in a white wedding dress? Mix it up a little, I don't know. Maybe a bridesmaid's gown wouldn't hurt. Maybe something red, something a little pizzazz on it, I don't know. Been watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race. Throw some glitter on something, I don't know. They're always taken out before their wedding night, it seems. Or apparently they're taken out over a vase. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elias Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons, 1 daughter, and a baker. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees, another steel worker, but her father wouldn't allow the relationship to really, take off. Anna vowed to never marry again, and she locked herself in her room. When her father passed away in 1848, she went to go find her true love, but he had since settled down. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, she was upset, rightfully so. Her father didn't let her have her true love, and now her soul still haunts that same wedding dress today. Not just the dress too, the mansion is haunted as well, and guests would report furniture and vases moving around all the time. That's not bad as far as hauntings go. If you ask me, moving couches? That'd be great. I have a bad back. I would love some help. Really, thank you. Anna, grab the side. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Number 6. The Crying Boy. Another painting! I know, but this one is extra creepy. So basically, there's this very popular print of a painting. It's a boy, he's crying! Oh, I know, who would want that though, seriously. There's different versions of it, but originally done by Bruno Armilio. Well, we don't talk about Bruno because his painting had some serious creep factor going on. Besides the fact that it's a crying young man who's peering into the very depths of your soul, firefighters began to notice a pattern when putting out house fires. There's a connection here, hold on, stay tuned. No smoke alarms, leaving the stove unattended, and this painting were common. I wonder why, except the painting was never damaged in any of these fires. And after putting out a few houses, and the same painting keeps showing up and keeps surviving the said fires, that's strange. That's weird. As it turns out, the print had flame retardant chemicals in its production, thus protecting it. Maybe just don't bring it inside though.
Number 5. The Hope Diamond. Coming from the 1660s, this curse began when a gem dealer named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier bought this large diamond when visiting India. He bought it with his earned money, okay? Remember that. The origins of the diamond were unknown, but it didn't matter. This beauty was just sitting there and he had to throw all the cash at it. He had to buy it with all of his money. For sure, the money that he had. Well, later on, after Tavernier got the diamond, rumors spread throughout Europe and the United States that he actually stole the diamond from the statue of a Hindu goddess. He didn't actually buy it. Yeah, a little different than his story. Sadly, more believable too. The newspapers actually kicked this one off by publishing the Hope Diamond as an ancient curse. The diamond at one point ended up in the hands of King Louis XVI and his wife, Marie Antoinette. Well, if you don't know about them, they lost their, they died. They lost their lives during the French Revolution, let's just say that. The old guillotine dream team. The stone then went to Lord Francis Hope come 1839, and by that point it was deemed cursed for real, hence the Hope Diamond name. They ended up selling the diamond shortly after being reduced to poverty, and then Evelyn Walsh McLean bought the stone in 1912. Shortly after, her son was killed in a car accident, and when the stone was delivered to its final and current home, the Smithsonian, back in 1958, the driver delivering the package was later hit by a truck. He survived, but shortly after this, his house caught fire. Moral of the story, you don't need diamonds, for more reasons than one.
Number 4, crude oil. Before anyone jumps all over me and says, but Chetty, I love crude oil because it provides jobs and economy. That's true, you're right, and there's probably going to be someone else saying that without crude oil and gasoline, how can they keep up their lifestyle? I need gas for my sedan, pickup truck, SUV, RV, dirt bike, quad bike, go-kart, speedboat, my John Deere, lawn equipment. All this is true, and as a big dude, I appreciate the automobile just as much as the next guy. I ain't walking. However, one cannot deny the amount of trouble oil has caused folks in the last 100 years. Name a place with oil and there's probably someone foaming at the mouth trying to get their hands on it. You can go either way on this one really. All I know is that I'm not the emperor of an evil empire looking for oil. Or am I?
Number 3. The Busby Stoop Chair. The Busby Stoop Chair comes from 1702, so right off the bat this legend kicked off only 10 years after the Salem witch trials. So take this one with a grain of salt, please. People made odd choices at this time. They kind of believed anything, women were witches, chairs were haunted. Welcome to 1702, I guess. Englishman Thomas Busby had some issues with his father-in-law. He didn't handle those issues well and he had to be hanged for it. Yeah, you can't just kill people for no reason, Thomas. What is it, 1701? That's crazy. He was hanged near the Humble Inn, ironic name, but a chair that was nearby during said hanging is now said to hold the spirit of one Thomas Busby. So legend has it, if you sit on this chair or if you put your knee on it or whatever, you are set to die in a frightful accident. A frightful accident! Big check, could you imagine? You sat in that chair, now you're gonna get your pants at work.
No!
That's it. God forbid you needed to tie your shoelace at the Humble Inn. The horrors! The horrors. So the chair was declared haunted. The chair was declared haunted. But did anything actually happen afterwards? Yeah, honestly. Sounds silly, but this was the real deal, I guess. Locals say during World War II, airmen from a nearby base came to the pub, and those who sat in the Busby chair have never returned. Again, could have had something to do with the war, but let's continue. Then in the late 70s, more accidents were connected, but they still kept the chair around until 1798. They're like, it's haunted, but it looks nice, It matches the wall. It stayed at the inn for that long, and then it was donated to the Thirsk Museum. So if you feel like checking out some haunted chairs, there you go, freaks.
Number 2. Capuchin Crypt. Hey, I get it. In the past, there were no home renovators. You couldn't walk into your favorite big box home renovation store and pick out some great additions for interior design. Well, some guys in Rome thought their church was a little underwhelming. They wanted something that made a statement, something bold, something macabre. The Church of Santa Maria in Rome, and it has a longer name, but it's not dyslexia friendly, so I'm not going to pronounce it, is a church that's decorated with skulls and bones arranged in tasteful art pieces, lining the walls and archways with bones that look like designs. And one room having some mummified monks and a wall full of skulls to comfort churchgoers. Oh god. I can just imagine what a room full of old bones smells like. Oh, no thank you. Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Oh.
And number 1, the Great Bed of Ware. Yeah, let's get nice and cozy for this last one. When putting this list together, Big Ched and I both agreed that haunted or not, this is a bed we would both have, for sure. It's massive, it's cozy, it caught our eye. It looks like a bed a king would sleep in, and rightfully so. The Great Bed of Ware was built for the royal family back in 1463. It was 12 feet by 12 feet, plenty of space to cut your toenails, whatever you want to do. Yeah, just brush them off. You got like 11 more feet to work with. You're good. It's a big bed. What a time. Jonas Fosbrook, a carpenter from the time, impressed King Edward IV with his work. The king gave him a pension for life all because of this bed. That's how good it was. Over time, the bed became property of the Lord of Ware Manor, a man named Thomas Fanshawe. People would travel all across the land to see this beauty. That's a fun family vacation. Hey, let's go see this bed. I heard it's a neat bed. Pack your stuff. Shakespeare mentioned it in the 12th Night, it was a big deal, but all those who stayed in the bed did not have a good night's rest. Rather, they woke up to scratches and bruises, it was horrible. That is, if they got enough sleep to begin with. People would wake up on the floor. Somehow they would roll out of a 12-foot bed. That's crazy. Today it can be found in the Victoria and Albert Museum, so if you want to go cuddle up, there you go.
Number 10, the Iceman. Otzi the Iceman is a mummified body of a man who lived in Europe around 3000 BC. Pretty long ago. Dude was chilling in the ice until we came across him in the Italian Alps and said, yep, this should be in a museum. Lots of studying was being done, and rightfully so. And for the people in that career field, that's very exciting. Lots of talking on how this poor man ended up there. One study suggests that a rather violent end as an arrowhead was found in his shoulder, meaning somebody gotsy Otzi. More troubling than that bad pun, however, is that mysteriously some folks who were working and salivating over the thought of studying more of poor Otzi, they also got gotsy, passed away. One after another, actually. Is it connected? Maybe, maybe not, but I know that the common denominator here was finding a dude in the ice, and I haven't done that. I'm still here, still breathing, hi. Number 9, cursed Maori masks. Maori warriors, not something that's talked about too much actually. I don't know why, they're pretty cool. The Maoris are indigenous Polynesian peoples who settled New Zealand. Easy, simple, to the point. Some might say, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. Good Star Wars reference, see if you get that. Well, if you find yourself visiting a museum in the Wellington area, then best be careful because the Maori masks that are on display are said to be cursed. Who would have thought? So much so that it's advised that pregnant and menstruating women keep their distance. What? Maori tradition dictates that these women are taboo? Thus, it could have a curse put upon them. Does it make sense? No. Do I agree with it? No. Is it weird? Yes. Am I going to test this theory? No. If you're pregnant, don't you need a display case, right? You catch something real bad. Number 8, Bassano vase. Vases, vases, fugazi fugats, whatever. I don't know how it's pronounced. My mom wouldn't let me near them as a kid. Okay, sure, I was loud and normally a walking disaster, but never in my rambunctious youth did I ever break something. I was a good boy, I swear. Well, maybe one vase I should have broken was the Bassano vase, a silver carved vase that was to be given to a bride on her wedding night in Napoli back in the 1500s. Trouble is, she was de-lifed, and the vase was handed down to her family. Trouble is, every time someone gets the vase, they end up 6 feet under. Or at least another family member does. It's kind of like the letter in Saving Private Ryan. Anyone who holds a letter to Vin Diesel's dad gets a German bullet with their name on it. Seriously, go back and watch the movie. You gotta go see it. Every time someone gets the letter from Vin Diesel, they croak. I'm telling you, you're gonna notice it, you're like, wow, Chetty was right. Eventually, the family told the police to take it away before it claimed another life. A weird story, just strange. Number 7, Oak Island. Everyone loves reality television, even just a little bit. If we didn't, the last 25 years of television wouldn't exist. Now, it's not my favorite thing to watch, but as a man, sometimes you just gotta watch other dudes forge metal and swords and say to yourself, yeah, I can do that. We're weird. Well, what if I told you a cursed island has its own reality TV show? Yes, The Curse of Oak Island. Basically, it's a show where two brothers who equally look like they could be your dad dig tons of holes on a Nova Scotian island to find what treasure lies there. That's pretty much the story behind the show. There's an island in Nova Scotia that's said to be buried treasure there, and this has been enough for a reason for prospectors to be looking for close to 100 years. And that's the truth. Now, naturally, bad things happen to those who look. More interesting than that is the theories of what's actually buried there. Some people say it's Templar treasure, the Holy Grail, pretty ancient, the Ark of the Covenant, weird, something to do with the Freemasons, Imperial British loot. Errol Flynn, John Wayne, and FDR were just some of the men interested in my Neighbors to the East treasure. That's a weird story. Ark of the Covenant, FDR, Errol Flynn, what? That's strange. Isn't it whole, Pilgrim? Number 6, burial sites. Alright, folks at home, this one you're gonna have to help me out with. Let me know in the comments, but this point is all about Indian Aboriginal burial grounds. Some of you folks in the Midwest, or perhaps in the desert states, have tales of when someone gave you or found an item from a burial ground and disturbed the grounds themselves, and after that happened, some mysterious things started to happen. Now, this one is kind of a broad stroke because there's just too many incidents to talk about. There's been theme parks, suburban homes. It just seems nothing is safe after the sacred grounds have been disturbed. So to prevent my home from filling up with blood like that scene in The Shining, I will leave these areas alone. You know, I hear living on the ocean is great these days. Lots of sunshine, water, all the fish you can eat, and poltergeist incidents are at an all-time low. However, shark attacks are up. You gotta do with the sharks. I'm just saying. Number 5, Chinese pyramids. Yeah, I know. I said that too. I had no idea these even existed. So the question you really have to ask yourself is what's worse than opening a sealed Egyptian tomb and pyramids, which we really shouldn't have been doing in the first place? Well, the answer is opening ancient Chinese tombs and pyramids, because we don't know what's going on in those bad boys. Sure, they're not as extravagant as the pyramids in Egypt, and the Egypt ones will always be number 1, it's just how it goes, but they're still mysterious. Plus, you can't compare the two. It would be like comparing Adam and me. We're both good at different things, we're both cute, both funny, he just happens to eat more glue out of a bottle than I do. Dude loves a good bottle of Elmer's, what can I say? I prefer wine. The reason why we don't know much about these mounds and pyramids is because some are still being discovered, and it was a long time ago. That's always a big factor. And of course, the Chinese government loves their secrets, so watch out. Number 4, catacombs in Paris. I can already hear the comments. I can just see them now. I'll talk about how weird and strange the catacombs of France are, and someone's gonna go full goth on me and say, Chetty, it's kind of cool to me actually. I don't think it's that weird. Okay, yeah, it is kind of weird though. Now, it's one thing to disturb a burial ground, but another to visit thousands upon thousands of skulls just for the heck of it. When researching the subject of the Paris catacombs, the first thing that came up was a travel website that described it as maximum fun. The chief called. He said, "Ce n'est pas ça," which means it is not it. Yeah, there's like 6 million people buried there. It's kind of crazy. Just, if you want to go visit, go ahead. But the travel website actually said that. Do you believe that? Maximum fun, bring the kids. It'll be great.
and this is the skull of another skull, and there's another skull.
Like, why would you bring the kids to that? I don't know. Take them to an aquarium. Number 3, the Winchester House. Okay, kind of a stretch in this one, I know. But honestly, this bad boy should be boarded up for good. Pour some concrete in there. Just extra thick nails, just for good measure. You never know. The Winchester House is a large property that belonged to the Winchester family of Winchester rifle fame. If you've ever seen a Western movie, video game, or heard your grandpa talk about it, then, well, you know what a Winchester rifle is. It's the rifle that settled the West. I'm sure our American audience needs no introduction. When someone comes along and reinvents the wheel, that person usually gets quite wealthy, as did the Winchester family. However, Mrs. Winchester had some bad luck. Family members perished, and it was thought to be because the family rifle had taken so many lives of its own. It's one thing to have a catacomb filled with skulls, but imagine if you're the reason why it's filling up. Come on, guys. Number 2, Egyptian gold. Besides the dude wrapped up in bandages chilling in a sarcophagus, there were other things left for the king in the afterlife. You might find his doggy or his kitty, jars of pickled pharaoh guts, jars and more vases. Maybe not the one from before, but lots of vases. But the most important thing you can find in there is treasures, gold, jewels, jewelry, valuables, and pretty much really anything of value. Plus, the pyramids kind of act like a car wash for valuables. For example, I could sell you a solid gold necklace, let's say for $1,000. Very nice indeed. And for the men out there, it's been a tough couple years. Let's treat the ladies this Christmas. Get them what they need. Gold necklace, you're welcome, ladies. But what if I told you the necklace I was trying to sell you once lay in the tomb for thousands of years? Oh baby, those prices are gonna get jacked up like my high school jalopy. She was rough. The point I'm getting here is no matter how much you want to ditch the high school car for something new, don't rob the grave of a powerful king. It'll come back to bite us. I just know it. If you open the tomb and there's money in there, close it, walk away. Come watch me instead, walk away from it. Don't do it. And number 1, Ayers Rock. I'm gonna be brief with this one because it's very simple. The point stands. Ayers Rock, Australia, the outback. Gorgeous place. Maybe one day I'll get to do a comedy tour down under. Look out, Aussies, I'm coming. The rock is a natural wonder and connected spiritually to the Aboriginals of the area. So when people are told not to take anything from the limestone natural site, even something as little as a rock, people still do it. And when they do it, they experience a lot of bad luck and they're forced to return it. So what's the lesson? Don't take anything. Don't do it. Not you're thinking about it. Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it. Naughty, don't do it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Ring of Sekinianas. One ring to rule them all. And by rule, I mean curse you and your entire family for ages to come. Yeah, this 12-gram gold ring, for starters, was massive. It was beautiful. Its diameter was 25 millimeters, so unless you were wearing some mighty gauntlet, she might slip off. Big ol' ring. It's like a big onion ring, but a little bit more haunting. The ring had first been found in 1785. A farmer was plowing a field in Silchester Village, which is a village west of London, known for its, grim history, as are most of these things on this list. In 45 AD, ancient Romans invaded that site, and come the 7th century, it was completely abandoned. No one was left there. The ring was mighty. It had an inscription on it as well, a Latin inscription. Of course, always Latin. It read, Senequion vivas in diem. When 1929 rolled around, new details surfaced, or resurfaced rather. The data from the ring matched an excavation that was done in the early 1900s, less than 100 miles away, a place called Lydney. That's where this ring is from. That's the OG site. At the same site, however, a tablet was found recalling the Celtic god of healing and hunting and how his favorite gold ring was stolen. In case you're wondering why this rings a bell, Lord of the Rings was inspired by this legend. The tablet also says, may he who bears the name of Senequianus not have health until he brings the ring back to the temple of Nodens. So, if you've got it, let's go.
Number 9, the Crystal Skull. Honestly, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this more. A lot of Mesoamerican stuff today, but damn, they got a lot of curses and jinxes on all their stuff. And in reality, that's not fair. All the guy wants to do is loot and pillage other civilizations' treasures, just like my ancestors before me. Nice. Maybe. Well, besides being the second worst Indiana Jones movie, yeah, I said it, I like that one better than the Temple of Doom. Now, if you didn't sit through an hour of Shia LaBeouf, and honestly I don't blame you, basically the skulls are like a Pokemon or Dragon Balls. You gotta catch them all. Only then you will receive a wish where a ghostly outworldish creature will grant you said wish. In other words, this is what a weekend at Vanessa Hudgens' house looks like. I don't know, she said she can talk to ghosts, so. The only ghouls that she's talking to are the people who think High School Musical holds up as a theatrical release. Seriously, try watching that movie now without cringing yourself into the bottom of a liquor bottle. Speaking of ghosts and liquor, you can buy alcohol in the shape of a crystal skull, because we are modern humans and we don't take ancient warnings very seriously. We will probably feel the wrath of the crystal skull, all thanks to a Canadian Ghostbuster.
Number 8. Pompeii artifacts. Once a thriving, beautiful city in ancient Rome, Pompeii was sadly destroyed in 79 AD. This time it wasn't humans responsible for the massive loss of life. What do you know? It was actually Mother Nature this time around. She got one. Nice. The eruption of Vesuvius buried the ancient city in volcanic ash. Thank you, it took 9 tries. Little do you know, viewer. Excavation didn't begin until much later, during the 18th century, and after a century of careful excavations, the city was finally reopened again to the public. Finally, yeah. Just the place you want to go. Hey, every year there's many reports of lootings, locals, tourists, you name it. Everyone wants to steal a little piece of Pompeii, literally a little just in their pocket. Yeah, as if raining volcanic ash wasn't bad enough, now there's thousands of people literally stealing your land. Piece by piece. Pompeii archaeological superintendents get over 100 packages a year of said stolen fragments. They return them. Yeah, thieves will send the artifact back with a little note explaining how sorry they are and how it's caused extreme bad luck in the household. Again, might have something to do with the fact that you're a thief, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's that one time. That's why your marriage failed.
Number 7. The Pharaohs of Egypt. It was said that any thieves who dare enter or disturb the slumber of the deceased kings shall be cursed and perish. Well, this applies to archaeologists too, unfortunately. Howard Carter, the famed archaeologist, and his team back in the 1920s had come across the discovery of a lifetime, finding the tomb of King Tutankhamun. You probably heard of him. And kickstarting the study of Egyptology. For anyone in the sciences out there, you know how exciting this is. Trouble is, some folks on Howard Carter's team started to feel a little under the weather. Maybe it was all the excitement from their discovery. Maybe it was the hot African sun and the dry desert, or maybe it was the curse of the Egyptian pharaohs, as some men on his team perished from blood diseases. That's just not okay. So what's the lesson here? Maybe leave these places alone before it starts raining frogs? Huh? Think about it. I don't want that.
Number 6. The Koh-i-Noor diamond. Another list, another cursed diamond. Here we go, buckle up. The Koh-i-Noor diamond translates to mountain of light in Persian, which sounds beautiful, but all that glitters is not gold. A Hindu legend says those who wear the diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. 186 carats, this thing was a pure beauty. Of course, it was passed ruler to ruler, century after century at that point. The earliest account actually is 1628. The diamond was first in the possession of Mughal ruler Shah Jahan, but once his own son had him imprisoned, the diamond later went to Iranian ruler come 1739. Nadir Shah invaded, taking countless lives as well as the Koh-i-Noor diamond, all their jewels for that matter, not just the one. It was horrible, but later on he was taken out by 15 of his own officers while he was asleep. Come the 18th century, Queen Victoria had possession of the diamond after being used in the Treaty of Lahore, but Queen Victoria wasn't a fan of the shape. Yeah, she's like, it doesn't really fit with my gauntlet to snap people away. So she had it recut. So now it's only 105 carats, it's a little smaller, but it's still beautiful. Since then, the diamond has only been worn by British royal women, or else we'll explode.
Number 5. Nazca Lines. Imagine the confusion the first pilots, airmen, or anyone who got a good vantage point in the Peruvian desert, and to their surprise discover some illustrations in the ground. Except, you know, they're massive and no one knows who the heck drew them. Or at least its origins. Obviously it was done by some sort of ancient tribe or civilization, sure, but the grade school process of thought isn't answered. And if you remember, then you remember. You know what I'm talking about. Your 5 W's. Your who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how. I almost forgot how to count there. That dyslexia is a heck of a thing. I mean, I know how they dug these bad boys in the sand, but hear me out. In those times, there's no plains. The only way you'd be able to see them is on the surrounding foothills. But there's no evidence that these people live close to those drawings, so who were they made for? Gods? Extraterrestrials? The weird guy with the weird hair on the History Channel would tell you so. All I'm gonna say is, anything that's meant for gods and aliens, it ain't meant for us. So keep an eye out in space there. Keep an eye out.
Number 4. Ballista balls. I'm not sure if you picked this up yet, but don't take things that don't belong to you. Great, hit the thumbs up for that common knowledge we should all have. Whether you believe in curses or not, leave things alone, and people for that matter, okay? If you want to learn more about Roman artillery, that's why we're here. Don't steal 6th century weaponry. Ever. It's a bad idea. Back in 1989, an archaeological team was brushing up the past near Israeli-Syrian borders, and the remains of an ancient Roman ballista, a massive crossbow, were found. It's exciting, but here comes the bad stuff. 6 years later, researchers found ballista balls, which were sadly the ammo when it came to these massive war machines. And in 2015, these balls appeared in a courtyard outside of a museum in Israel, written from an anonymous thief, imploring others to never touch those stone balls or take them. As, you know, they're cursed. They're all cursed, apparently, full of bad luck. His family apparently left him, this thief, and he had to sell everything he possessed in order to just get by, including those ballista balls. He was gonna sell them and he's like, you know what, no, that's the last thing I own, I'm putting it back. Could be a curse, again, or the fact that he was the thief. Either or. Both not great.
Number 3, Montezuma's Revenge. Yes, that's right. Montezuma's Revenge, a traveler's worst nightmare. I too have succumbed to the horrors of Montezuma's Revenge. And it's always when I gotta do something important, like on a movie set, or with a group of people I'm really trying to impress, especially career-wise. So the rule is no pickled bocconcini peppers before a critical event. However, I'm talking about a different kind of Montezuma's Revenge, not the bathroom kind. I'm talking about his gold. I'm talking about when Hernan Cortez and the conquistadors destroyed the Aztec Empire. Montezuma cursed them. And that applies to his lost gold as well, which in case you didn't know, the Spanish were after. It's pretty much all they were after. So if Montezuma can curse your family trip to Cancun, then surely he can curse a pile of his own gold and jewels. After some were dumped in the lake and others in the desert, I just wouldn't exactly be so excited to go find it. You don't know what might happen if you do. If he can give you diarrhea, maybe he can give you vomiting. You don't know. You don't know. I'm pointing a lot in this video.
And number 2, ancient mirror. It doesn't matter who you are, you've heard of this curse before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're experiencing this curse right now, I hope not. You break a mirror and what do you get? You get 7 years of bad luck. Has this happened to you ever? If so, what year are you on? I'm on 4 myself. How close are you to the 7-year mark? Because we got your back, okay? Ancient Romans believed that the human soul would renew every 7 years. That's where the 7-year thing comes into play. It's where it all started. It takes time to repair the human soul, right? Combined with the belief that mirror's reflection was the only way into the soul, well, now we have one dude in history who feels really bad for breaking the first ever mirror. Therefore, a curse has lived on. If you break a mirror, you're tearing the soul from the body, and now you're abandoning it. In Kazakhstan, if you break a mirror, evil spirits will haunt the person responsible for the damage. That's a pretty horrible deal. They say you can't look into a broken mirror afterwards, like once it shatters into a bunch of pieces, because that's bad luck as well. So if you break a mirror, you just gotta do nothing about it, I guess. You just gotta be like, okay, and sweep without looking. There's too many mirrors now. I can cut to today. I'm sure ancient Romans had no idea what 2022 would look like. We have phone cases with mirrors on them. We're literally surrounded by mirrors. I broke a studio mirror, a dance studio mirror once. Am I doomed? I feel like I'm doomed.
Number 1, vampire burial. If you couldn't tell, I get a lot of my knowledge from movies, TV, and video games. It's just what raised me, that's how it goes. So you can't blame me when my knowledge of vampires comes from Skyrim and the hit young adult romance novels Twilight. You know what I'm saying? However, what I do know is that they have sharp teeth, they don't like garlic, and will cease to exist if you drive a wooden stake through their heart. However, that's kind of a moot point, as most things would not work anymore if you did that. I know I wouldn't. Some folks in Poland a few hundred years ago were not taking any chances, however. Remains found in Kaldus, Poland were that of anti-vampire graves. Basically, you bury the vampires and you leave a wooden stake in their heart just in case it wants to wake up and eat you, or do whatever they do at night. I don't know, blah blah blah, some of that stuff. Or remove their head entirely. No wooden stake? No problem. Just toss a couple small boulders into the hole. That way, the bloodthirsty menace can't get people. You know, boy, people in the past were so kind. That's so nice.
Number 10 is the pyramids of Chichen Itza. These ancient Mayan pyramids are obvious ones to end up on our list. This ancient structure has long since been connected to aliens. Many believe that they helped build the structure, but also use them as markers for landing space vessels. There's of course a theory as well though that the top of the pyramid has emitted a powerful energy beam, enabling the ancient Mayans to communicate with aliens or other pyramids around the world, implying the potential of interconnectedness between multiple pyramids and civilizations that we'll talk about through this video. Number 9 is the Vastu architecture. These temples in India contain intriguing alien-like depictions carved on their stone walls. People flying, alien-esque figures, strange flying devices, the whole alien shebang. So, one theory for this is that aliens visited ancient Indians, and these interactions are depicted on their stonework now as a result. And to tack onto that, some believe that when these aliens shared their flying technology, the Indian people began to worship them as their gods. Naturally, we circle back to the concept of pyramids and grand temples being built to having the ability to harness energy from above to communicate with aliens or other civilizations as well. But it's being said that these temples were constructed with specific design given in old Hindu texts known as Vastu Shastra, and the texts give intensely specific considerations to astronomy in its design, basing it off of all the movements of the stars and planets. So maybe a space laser being emitted from the temple isn't too far off. The gods, architectural methods, and advanced technology may not confirm the existence of aliens coming to Indian land, but at least can raise some suspicion. Anyways, the temples show similarities to the depiction of an ancient Indian flying machine called Vin Amas, which will be number 8 on the countdown. Scripts from over 2,000 years ago in India claim dozens of accounts of people seeing these flying machines. They're described differently in some accounts: man-made wings like a plane, a disc shape, and the famous cloud palace depiction. The Sanskrit word Vinmanana, when translated, literally means measuring out, traversing. In short, it means some form of aircraft. When 8 chapters of this ancient document are translated from Sanskrit, they revealed an intriguing list of these features that the devices had, such as remote images on screens, remote sounds. To protect itself, it had the ability to disguise itself as a cloud or create terrifying sounds. The discussion on Vimamana includes various constructions to double as boats or even submarines. There's discourses on astrophysic pressure, aeronautic hazards, and even dietary and clothing for aviators. These writings were no manifestations or metaphors. They talked about how the gods rode them, but anyone may ride and own one as well. They were treated as manufactured physical objects or even flying houses. For this much ancient text to be translated and have so much modern ideology and inventions, well, it must be aliens, or perhaps some ancient sci-fi stories, or perhaps now we see these objects with hindsight and try to fit them into something that makes more sense to us now, such as an airplane. But they're just anything but, and we'll never know. Number 7 is Stonehenge, another you should know to expect to see on this list. Now, I won't bring up things like the Easter heads since we have sufficient evidence of human craft, but Stonehenge? On the table, so let's dive in. The Circle of Stone sits in the countryside of Salisbury, and it comes from the Neolithic period, which was the final division of the Stone Age. They stand alone, a vast meadow sprawling for miles around it. Having visited Stonehenge myself, I can tell you that you have the choice of a 20-minute walk or a 5-minute shuttle ride. The energy is very void, as if the air is free of static and just doesn't seem to move. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it does truly feel unearthly. These stones weigh an average of 50 tons and are over 8 feet in height. They seemingly dropped into their ring, no rhyme or reason in their placement, at least to Swiss author Eric von Däniken, who suggests that they may be a model of the solar system that doubled as an alien landing pad. How Stonehenge is assembled is unknown to us. There's no documentation, no other ruins, no artifacts. There's genuinely nothing but these stones, some of which were somehow lifted feet upwards and placed horizontally on others. There's no way to know what it means either, but what we do know is that the stones are somehow perfectly aligned with solstices and eclipses, suggesting that the builders did know astrological charts and were able to keep an eye on the heavens. That's if they didn't come from them. Number 6 is interplanetary, but still alien to us, hieroglyphics on Mars. We've always talked about and conspired about aliens visiting us in ancient civilizations here on Earth, but what if they visited elsewhere? Or we have. Ooh, sorry, that's ghosts, not aliens. Anyways, the reason for that is some NASA photos were released in 2015 that were taken by the Curiosity rover. It shows what looks like some kind of writing or hieroglyphic on the rocks. A boxy 2 shape next to what looks like a curved Y with 2 other extending legs are side by side. While we can't be sure what the marks are at this point, it certainly has enthused ancient alien believers who claim that this is yet more evidence that aliens and ancient peoples visited one another. But skeptics argue the so-called discoveries on the images sent back by the rover are just textures in the rock. Despite the temptation of reading into evidence found so far, scientists' understanding of Martian history is still unfolding. Questions up for debate are: was the ancient Martian atmosphere thick enough to keep the planet warm and wet for the time necessary to nurture life? Are organic compounds found as signs of life, or simple chemistry that occurs when Martian rock interacts with our sun and water? What's your take? Hieroglyphics and conspiracy, or do you think they're just some cracked rocks. Up next is the City of the Gods, number 5. Teotihuacan is its actual name. This sprawling ancient city in Mexico is known best for its astronomically aligned buildings and complex pyramid temples. Their building was dated back 2,000 years, and scientists have suspected a mixture of cultures including Mayan, Zapotec, and Mixtec built the city so that they could house more than 100,000 people. They adorned it with murals, and they had a transportation system. Evidence shows advanced agricultural practices that earned the city a reputation of being much more technologically developed than should be possible in pre-Aztec Mexico. So naturally that brings us to the ideology of aliens, especially as the most massive temple, the Pyramid of the Sun, which is one of the largest constructions in the Western Hemisphere. It's also been noted that the alignment of the pyramids is based on calendar cycles. Many people believe that the flat-top pyramid served as a landing pad where the alien secrets lay inside the impenetrable walls. In 2003 though, a sinkhole caused by a flood led to the discovery of the Avenue of the Dead tunnel, connecting the Sun Temple with the Temple of the Plumed Serpent. People believe that this connection correlates with rituals and contacts shared between civilizations and aliens, these tunnels being used to transport sacrifice or make passage between the communication stations easier. Its name was given to it by the Aztecs when its deserted ruins were discovered sometime in the 1300s. It had already been abandoned for centuries at this point. When the name's translated, it means the place where men become gods, and why they chose to name it that, we're unsure. When the Aztecs found it, there was likely a great amount of discernible history available in contrast to today's standards. Perhaps they saw writings and stories that we didn't, something to make them believe in godly powers of the temples or the peoples. We know frustratingly little about this mysterious society, from the conditions of its rise to the circumstances of its collapse to its actual name. The Delphi site of Greece is number 4. Alien theorists love to use Greeks as a basis for their theories. This is because of the possibility of life beyond Earth is one that began in ancient Greek world, originating at least as far back as the 4th century BC, when ancient Greek society had schools of thought that speculated extraterrestrial life. One of the favorite examples is Delphi, Greece, where the stone masonry is eerily similar to that of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, which is believed to be a site of alien intervention. This was also the famous site of the Oracle of Delphi, a prophetic woman who would reside in the temple of Parnassus. She was rumored to have sat on a golden tripod over a fissure in limestone where she could breathe in the breath of Apollo and communicate with invisible forces. What she was breathing in, we aren't sure. According to toxologist Henry Spiller, both of the ways an oracle's vision would occur, either peaceful and slow or erratic and barely legible, are symptoms associated with inhalation of hydrocarbon gases, aka she could have just been zooted. But with the architecture as a star, alienologists jumped to say that this perhaps too could have truly been alien communication. The oracle was said to be possessed by Apollo in order to be asked prophetic questions about upcoming war, political actions, theories of life, and more. What if it wasn't Apollo, but rather she was channeling alien messages through an unconscious state, that the fissure had been a beam of alien power going into her? Maybe that explains why Delphi, Greece is considered one of the 3 major UFO sighting hotbeds in Greece. In fact, on June 3rd of 2012, this picture was taken and posted on a UFO forum, claiming the image to contain a UFO. What do you think, faux or fact? It's Corral Soup at number 3. And despite its significance now, the importance of this site wasn't determined until decades after its discovery. Hilariously, this is because of the sheer size and complexity of it deceived scholars, and many believe that the site was more recent, so they left it largely ignored. It's in 1994, Ruth Shady was studying the site. She realized the lack of pottery wasn't because of the recency, the site was just dated before the advent of pot firing technology. Radiocarbon dating on some of the woven bags found inside the pyramid confirmed that Corral Soup were the locus of some of the earliest population concentrations and corporate architecture in South America, dating somewhere around 2600 BC, which upended history's well-established timeline, pushing it back 4600 or more years. Now since then, other Notre Chico sites have been found that date several hundred years earlier, but at the same time Corral Soup was being built, so was the ziggurats in Mesopotamia and the step pyramids of Egypt, all incredibly similar structures. Ancient astronaut theorists believe that they could be profoundly connected, especially following the theory of ancient buildings such as these that tend to average around the 4500 age range. But the largest mystery of Corral Soup remains why it was abandoned so suddenly after thousands of years of inhabitation. There's no concrete evidence indicating a single event like an earthquake or large flood that ended this occupation. Number 2 is the Nazca Lines. These are a little more famous, so you may be familiar. They lay 320 kilometers southeast of Lima, and they cover a total length of 1300 kilometers of high and dry plateau. They're seemingly at random. Joining them are 300 geometric shapes and 70 figures of animals, including a spider, a monkey, a hummingbird, and a bizarre alien man figure. The biggest shapes stretch nearly 1,200 feet across and are best viewed from the air. Scientists suspect that the Nazca drawings are as many as 2 millennia old, and because of their age, size, and visibility from above, and mysterious nature, the lines are often cited as one of the best examples of alien handiwork on Earth. I mean, how would an ancient culture have been able to make such huge designs in the desert without being able to fly? And why? The longest of the lines run straight as an arrow for miles, so some believe it would have acted as a landing strip. Perhaps the art was meant to be gifts of appreciation to the aliens so they may look down at them from above. So, how did the ancients manage to create such a precise etchings from the ground without being able to fly? The only theoretical way is that people could have flown in the air at this time is with the form of a hot air balloon, as suggested by American explorer Jim Woodman. But we don't know for sure, so the Nazca lines remain a fascinating enigma. But the explanation for how the Nazca lines were physically created is quite simple. They're called geoglyphs. These enigmatic designs are made by removing the top rust-colored layer of rocks and exposing the bright white sand underneath. And for number 1, let's investigate the Sardinian giant. The Mediterranean's most important archaeological discovery of the 20th century was a complete accident and also unearthed a creepy conspiracy. When farmers are plowing their fields in 1974 in central Cabras, they hit something. That something turned out to be 5,000 fragments that underwent a painstaking and lengthy reconstruction process to form gigantic statues. 16 boxers, 6 archers, and 6 warriors. This colossal army of 26 statues has a height of 8 feet 2 inches and weigh an average of 880 pounds each. Each figure was carved from one limestone block alone. They have highly stylized features such as triangular faces, T-shaped eyebrows and noses, and their most distinctive features are their eyes. They're represented by large round circles that stare straight ahead and right into your soul. I imagine if they weren't built to be intimidating, they were anyways. Every photo I've seen feels like they see through you. This is one of the aspects that give the statues an alien look, fueling alternative theories about the ancient astronauts. What is certain is that the giants are surrounded by an aura of legend since their discovery, as they belong to the mysterious Nuragic civilization, which very little is known of. The lands of Sardinia are also dotted with their tombs, which are called tombs of giants. Why? Because they're huge! The burial chambers are 65 to 98 feet in length and 7 to 10 feet deep, and according to the various inhabitants of nearby cities, very large bones were found in the countryside surrounding their village. Some claim that they belong to men up to 11 feet tall. Legendary painter Muscus himself found the remains of a giant skeleton in a cave in 1972, when he was still a child, and made one of these claims himself. Interviewed repeatedly by journalists, locals stand by that any giant skeletons that have shown up or been shown to authorities or the experts when they are found almost always disappeared into thin air the next day. Sometimes so did the finder.